Welcome to the Newsome MMA podcast, partnered with Concussion Pro 1, the world's first dedicated concussion supplement. I'm your host as always, Newsome, with your co-host John, and we're here to break down UFC on ESPN Plus 3, which is going down on Saturday night in Prague, Czech Republic. John, how you doing, bro?
How you doing, man? I'm very well, thank you. Really looking forward to this card, back on European soil, which we always like to see. And as always, looking forward to talking to the fights, man.
Yeah, man, I've just said Saturday night, actually. For us, it's actually afternoon/evening in the UK. We get a nice afternoon card. But I'm so excited for this card, man. It's obviously lacking some name value, but the hardcores will absolutely know all of these fighters, and will also know that it's going to be fireworks from start to finish, man. You've got to feel the same, right?
Definitely, man. I'm really excited about it. Some great matchups, some great matchmaking. UFC have some gems from the European scene as well. So really looking forward to it.
For sure. And just before we start, I'd just like to remind you all that the Premium Bets membership options from Newsome MMA are available, and on the Newsome MMA website, you've got the options of a standard bronze, silver and gold membership, and these memberships provide cheaper prices per fight card for those that commit to slightly longer terms, opposed to purchasing my picks individually per week. You can find all of these membership options at newsomemma.co.uk/premium-bets. So let's break down some fights. UFC Prague from bottom to top, and in the first fight of the night, we've got Damir Ismagulov versus Joel Alvarez. John, who have you got?
Yeah, this is an interesting matchup to open the card. Ismagulov obviously making his second UFC appearance. We saw him against Alex Georges back in December last year. He took the unanimous decision victory in that one, and he's going up against UFC newcomer Spain's Joel Alvarez. We don't see many guys from Spain fighting in the UFC, so it's going to be really interesting to see his level, where he's at. He's young, he's only 25 years old, so it's going to be really interesting to see whether he can make that step up. And man, he's got a tough opponent on his UFC debut. In Ismagulov, and I'm actually going to be picking Ismagulov in this fight. I believe that his wrestling is going to be superior. We saw that against Georges. We saw that he was able to take him down, hold him down, press him against the cage, wear him down, and pretty much control the fight throughout. And we've seen that throughout his career in M1 as well. He does have some finishes via strikes, but a lot of his fights, he just dominates from start to finish. And Alvarez, I worry about his takedown defense. I know that he's got a lot of submission wins. He's dangerous on the ground. He's very dangerous on the ground. I mean, you look at all his recent wins. I mean, his last 5 or 6 wins, he's won by triangle choke, anaconda, triangle, guillotine, triangle. But he's fighting on all those fights have come for a promotion called AFL, and obviously there's a big step up between these regional cards and the UFC, man. And like I say, he's going up against the M1 lightweight champion, the former M1 lightweight champion, who has fought under the bright lights of the UFC before as well. So obviously when we have these newcomers on the cards, we always talk about that and how that will affect him. And it'll be interesting to see whether he can throw anything up off his back. But from what I saw of Ismagulov's last fight against Georges, he was very wise to the submissions. He was controlling the arms, controlling the posture on the ground. He was always making sure that he was out of submission danger with his hand positioning and things like that. And yeah, I just think it's a step up in levels, and I think those guys that you can get the triangle chokes on and things like that in the regional scenes, you can't do that when it comes to the big leagues like the UFC. For that reason, I think Alvarez is just going to get out wrestled. I think he's going to be on his back for the majority of the fight, and I don't see him throwing up a submission and catching Ismagulov with anything. Therefore, I'm going with Ismagulov to win this via unanimous decision.
Yeah, man, there's 2 big winning streaks on the line here. We've got Ismagulov on a 12-fight winning streak. We've got Joel Alvarez on a 10-fight winning streak. So, man, whoever gets their winning streak broken, it's gonna have to be a big deal, because it's tough. This is a tough one for me to be absolutely confident on, and the reason being is it comes down to Joel Alvarez. Now, it's always hard getting a read on somebody that's come in off the regionals because, he's, like you've mentioned, he's spent the majority of his fights on the Spanish regional scene, which, it begs a lot of questions. The level of opposition that he's been fighting, his opponents, some of them have got decent records, but are those padded records from the regional scenes also? It's just got, you could just go deeper and deeper into, into that sort of thing to the point where you just become unsure. Now, the other side to this is Joel Alvarez really, really good? And, as the old saying goes, you can only beat what's put in front of you. So he's had 16 fights. He's lost only one. But out of the 15 wins, he's finished every single opponent. Now, regardless of what level of opponent has been standing across the cage from him, you can, like I've just mentioned, you can only beat what's in front of you. And he's doing that. He's doing exactly what's expected of a high-level fighter when you're fighting, or if you're fighting, lower-level competition. But the problem is, because all these are quite quick finishers and not a lot of them leave the first and the second round, it's hard to get a really good read on how good this guy actually is. And actually fighting someone like Damir Ismagulov will give us a great insight to where he's at. Is he actually legit in just putting away the guys that he's supposed to put away, or is he not that great and has just finished those guys because they aren't that great?
Yeah.
It's a hard one to call, but I think the questions will only be answered after this fight is done. So that's why I'm having a tough time being very decisive with this one. But I have to go with Ismagulov. As you've already mentioned, John, he's already been under the bright lights of the UFC. He's already been on that big stage. It was a solid performance as well. Now, I know you've touched upon a lot of his wrestling and grappling, but I liked his striking as well. It was crisp. He was throwing 1-2s sharp. He was in and out of range nicely as well against Alex Georges. And I just feel his performance was what you would expect from a former champion coming from M1, I think the experience and the level of opposition definitely goes in favour of Ismagulov. It's going to be interesting to see what he does in this fight and how he approaches it, because, as you've already mentioned, the submission wins that Joel Alvarez has had are all defensive wrestling submissions. So, like you've said, the guillotines, the triangles, the arm bars, they're all really defensive. The offensive submissions are your rear naked chokes, are your arm triangles, that Kimuras, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it's going to be interesting to see if Ismagulov tests this, and I hope he does, because that gives us a great insight to both guys. Because if Ismagulov can take someone like Joel Alvarez down and he's throwing these submissions up from bottom and he doesn't get caught in it, then, that's great to know further down the line that he is savvy with his submission defense and his awareness on the mat. But then on the flip side, if he takes Joel Alvarez down and gets caught in an armbar or a triangle or gets guillotined on the way down, then we know for sure that Joel Alvarez is actually legit if he's pulling off these types of submissions in the UFC. As you've already mentioned, it is, those types of submissions do work a lot easier on the regional scene, and it's much tougher to do when you come into the UFC. So I do agree with that, and like I say, for those reasons, I'm going to go with Ismagulov. I think that if Joel Alvarez comes in aggressive and wild, which we have seen in the limited tape that we've watched, I think Ismagulov can use, his sharp strikes, his sharp boxing, or he can use Joel Alvarez's weight against him and take him down to the mat, which again, like I say, is where it gets interesting. I'm trusting the Russian in this one. I'm trusting the experience. I'm trusting the former M1 champion, so I'm going Damir Ismagulov to win. And you know what? I think he's actually going to put Alvarez away. I think that if he takes him down and Alvarez is throwing up these submissions, he can't get the submissions. I think Ismagulov will put some ground and pound on him, and I think he'll make Joel Alvarez quit. So I've got Damir Ismagulov to win, and I've got him to win via knockout. Now, in the next fight of the night, we've got another good one. We've got Rustam Khabilov versus Diego Ferreira. John, who have you got?
Yeah, man, this is another really exciting fight. Obviously, we've got Khabilov coming into this fight on a good winning streak. He's won his last about 6 or 7 fights coming into this fight. Most recently defeated Kazan Johnson split decision back in September. That was a real back and forth fight, and a very hard fight to score. Obviously, we all know what Khabilov Johnson's all about. His movement is very elusive, so it was hard for Khabilov to implement his game plan and what he likes to do best in his wrestling in that fight. But he got the win and got it done, which is what you've got to do out there. Diego Ferreira, I mean, he had a 2-year layoff, came back against Jared Gordon. Pretty much, his bread and butter is his jiu-jitsu, but he put Jared Gordon away in the first round with strikes, and then he took on Carl Nelson back at UFC 231 in December, short notice opponent, and in that fight he was in trouble in the first round. Nelson hurt him and wobbled him a couple of times, and it looked like Nelson could get the upset on his return to the UFC, but yeah, he just ran out of steam towards the. He looked like he suffered a bit of an adrenaline dump after rocking Ferreira, and yeah, when they came after the second round, Ferreira got that takedown pretty much straight away, and yeah, just worked a full man and pounded him out, man. But this is a real tough fight to call. Your age-old saying is that he's never bet against the Dagestanis in Khabilov, and I'm going to have to bet against him in this fight. My lean is towards Ferreira, and here's why. He's bread and butter is his jiu-jitsu, we know that, so he's going to be good off his back. Now, Khabilov is predominantly a wrestler. He's a good wrestler as well. He's heavy on top, and whether he gives Ferreira any room to work anything from the bottom, we don't know. I'm not sure, but I believe that Ferreira's wrestling has improved during his time off. We saw him get the takedown against Nelson. We've seen him earlier on in his career against Olivier Aubin-Mercier, who's predominantly a wrestler, get a win, albeit that was back in 2016. But we've also seen a very good improvement in his striking. I think he's a better striker than Khabilov. Now, this is a real close fight, man. This is by no means an easy pick to make, but I think Ferreira wins the striking battle. Khabilov's striking is improving, but I think Ferreira wins the striking battle between the two. I think with his jiu-jitsu, he can be dangerous off his back. Although we haven't seen any submissions from his back for a long time, I think he will threaten with submissions, and that will help to either sweep or get back up and stand up. And as long as he can do that, as long as if he does get taken down early, or if he's getting taken down regularly, as long as he can get the fight back to the feet pretty quickly, I think he's going to win a decision here. Now, my only worry is that since we've seen him come back from that 2-year layoff, he does like to plod forward a lot. He likes to be aggressive. He likes to stand in striking range and just throw bombs. And if he does do that and just walk forward, Khabilov will get the timing down on that and get the takedowns off a whiff strike. And if he can keep him down, then I think he's going to get he'll obviously get the nod in the judge's eyes. I don't think Khabilov will finish Ferreira. We haven't seen Khabilov finish anyone for a long time now. I mean, back in 2013, I think it was the last time he finished anyone. That was Yancy Medeiros as a result of a hand injury. So I don't think we're going to see Khabilov get the finish. But yeah, I'm leaning towards Ferreira on this one. But like I say, it does all depend on when he gets taken down, whether he can scramble back to his feet. But personally, I think with his jiu-jitsu background, I think he will be able to, and I think he'll do the more damage on the feet. I think he's a better striker, so therefore I'm going with Ferreira to win by unanimous decision.
Yeah, man, it's a good fight, and this is how I think it's going to go down. So Ferreira, like you said, I agree. I think he does win the striking battle, the early stages anyway, because we've seen Diego Ferreira tire as the fights go later on, and that's not necessarily him tiring for overworking either. I just think that as the fights progress, he does diminish quite notably. So I think the early stages, Ferreira is going to be dangerous in that first round. I think Khabilov is patient, especially when it comes to closing the distance with his strikes to look for a takedown. He doesn't try and play a game where he wants it to look obvious that he's trying to get the fight to the mat. But in the back of his mind, he wants to get the fight to the mat at all times. So I think the early stages, I think Khabilov will stand for the majority of round one, if not all of round one. I think, like you've said, and I agree, I think Ferreira will get the better of him via strikes, and he's got to be careful in that first round as well, because he has been dropped. Khabilov has been dropped before, and we have seen that Ferreira's got power in his hands. Obviously, he ended up knocking Jared Gordon out, who's notoriously tough to put away. So Khabilov has to be careful in that first round that he doesn't take too much damage, gets dropped, and if he does get dropped, Ferreira has got the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to hop his back and choke him out. We have seen Khabilov lose via a submission before, which was Benson Henderson via naked choke. Although it was a bit of a weird rear naked choke. Go back and watch it, you'll see what I mean. But I think the longer this fight goes on, the more it favours Khabilov. And I think Khabilov will start getting those takedowns. Ferreira can be taken down. We've seen Beneil Dariush take him down. We did see Ferreira in that fight be a little bit active off his back, throwing stuff up, looking for the legs and stuff like that. So he was active for a period of time off his back. But again, he slowed down. And once he slowed down, Beneil Dariush was then able to take him down and just hold him down and not really do too much, just really grind him out, waste time on the clock, do enough on the mat so the referee doesn't separate him or stand them up, and then, like I say, you're winning on the scorecards. And Beneil Dariush got him to that point where Ferreira was not doing anything off his back, and that's a worry for Ferreira in this fight, because if Khabilov does anything amazingly, that's what he can do. He'll take you down, he'll make you work, and these aren't double leg takedowns or single legs all of the time. The trips and the throws and just making his opponent waste that little bit more energy than what they would do with another type of wrestler. And this is what Khabilov does really, really well, and he wins fights that are close, man. The dude is a winner. Now, this is an opinion that a lot of people will disagree with. Now, when I saw the Khabilov and Kajan Johnson fight, when it happened, I was convinced that was a borderline robbery. But actually, having watched the fight back over this last couple of days, I do agree with the decision, and I think Khabilov won the fight, and not many people will agree with me. But the point being, anyway, whether you think he won or lost that fight, he wins close fights. He's 14-2 on the scorecards. That's no joke of a statistic. The dude wins decisions. And I just feel that if Ferreira doesn't get him out there, if he doesn't knock him out, or if he doesn't catch him on the mat with an early submission, I just feel the longer this fight goes, the more diminished Ferreira will look with his gas tank and his cardio, and the more Khabilov will take over. Once Khabilov starts getting those takedowns with frequent takedowns, when he starts racking up 2, 3, and 4, and that's if Ferreira's standing back up from them, I think the fight just gets easier for him as it goes on. Like I said, I think the early stages are going to be very sketchy for Khabilov, but if he gets through it, I see him winning. So I've got Rustam Khabilov to win via decision. Now, in the next fight of the night, we've got a short notice fight: Michel Prazeres versus the newcomer Ismail Naurdiev. John, who have you got?
Yeah, we've seen the return of one of your guys here, Prazeres. Man, the beast, the little tank. He's making his return after that fantastic quick finish of Bartosz Fabinski back in November, and that was a fight that I remember talking about on the podcast. We were really looking forward to seeing how that one would play out, and we didn't have to wait very long, because it was over within just over a minute, I think it was. Prazeres landing that massive overhand right, working a bit of ground and pound, and then wrapping up the neck when Fabinski was trying to get back to his feet, and I think he forced Fabinski into tapping twice, if I remember correctly, with the referee missing the first one. But man, he's just an absolute beast, and he just seems to be getting better and better. At 37 years of age, he doesn't seem to be slowing down. He's on an 8-fight win streak. He hasn't lost since 2015, when he lost to Kevin Lee. He's beat some tough guys. I mean, over the course of his career, he's beaten Mehmet Taisimov, Gilbert Burns, Des Green, Zach Cummings, now Fabinski, and yeah, he's going up against the another UFC newcomer, Ismail Naurdiev, nicknamed the Austrian Wonder Boy. I don't know if that's based on Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, or whether that's based on something else. But if you've seen any of his fights, and if you look at his fighting style, it could well be named after the original Wonder Boy. I mean, this guy's only 22 years old, and he throws some crazy stuff. He throws some wild spinning back fists, spinning back elbows, spinning wheel kicks, all sorts of crazy techniques, and he's athletic, man. He hits hard. His last fight he won 36 seconds into the first round, catching Paulo Stenio Rocha with a nasty shot after he'd stuffed the takedown. Fight before that, he beat Georgi Valentinov via a combination of spinning wheel kick and follow-up punches in the first round back at ACB. And I mean, this kid's got a bright future. I think he's really exciting. I mean, he's a fighter that people will want to see if he carries on in the same vein, and he carries on with the same flamboyance, I should say, as to what we've seen previously in his career so far. Saying that, though, I'm going to be going with the UFC veteran Prazeres to win this fight. I just think he's going to have seen it all before. He gives up as usual. He'll be giving up quite a significant height and reach advantage, but I think he's mastered how to overcome that. He gets inside. He'll fire that overhand when the longer fighters are trying to utilize their jab, and he hits hard, man. And something that I noticed while studying the tape of Naurdiev is he doesn't mind getting hit to land some of these wild techniques, and he'll happily accept getting hit to land two shots himself. And I just don't think he's going to be able to do that against such a heavy hitter in Prazeres. He's got heavy hands, and then he's also got his wrestling and his heavy top control if needs be. And like I say, he's just an absolute beast. If he gets hold of you, he'll wear you down. He'll push you against the cage. He'll outstrength a lot of people, and I just think that's how this is going to go. I think he's going to wear on Naurdiev early to lessen the threat of those techniques, and then I don't know whether Naurdiev will tire as the fight starts to wear on, as we just mentioned, short notice opponent, and I do see Prazeres catching him at some point and clipping him and hurting him, because like I mentioned, he does get caught in his fights. Naurdiev, he has been clipped, albeit we haven't really seen him, or I haven't seen him from the footage I've seen be particularly rocked. But yeah, you don't want to go using your face to defend many shots, that's for certain. So yeah, I think he'll get caught possibly in the second round with a shot that'll stagger him, and then I see Prazeres jumping on him and again, either getting the ground and pound or maybe wrapping up another choke or something similar to what we saw in the Fabinski fight. But yeah, I'm going with Michel Prazeres to win this fight in the second round via stoppage.
Yeah, to answer your question in regards to the Austrian Wonderboy comment, I think it is. I feel the same thing as well. And
his technique is very similar. He throws a lot of spinning kicks and lots like taekwondo-esque style shots.
His stance and his bounce and just the way he moves, it did remind me a little bit of Wonderboy. So it could be a reference for sure. I think this is a horrific matchup for Naurdiev. I like the dude. I think he's exciting. I agree with you. I think that he may do well in the UFC. I definitely think he wins fights in the UFC 100%. We all know these short notice guys always end up getting called back up for another performance. Naurdiev has nothing to lose here apart from an L on his record. Like, absolutely nothing to lose coming up against someone like Prazeres. But like I say, I think it's a horrific matchup for him. It's a short notice fight against one of the most impressive, powerful, aggressive, in-form fighters in the world of MMA right now. It's also Naurdiev's UFC debut. And not only that, after looking into this fight, I just think it's a bad stylistic fight too. Naurdiev's shown a tendency to back off in straight lines and look pretty uncomfortable when his opponent's winging and throwing bombs at him, which is definitely a trait of Prazeres. That's how Prazeres closes the distance. It leaves him open to be hit, or like I've said, it makes him available for that distance to be closed, which is the last thing that you want against someone like Prazeres. He can be taken down as well. We saw that in his last fight in ACB. He was taken down multiple times. Round one, in fact, I think it was every round he was taken down. After he was down and off, on his back for like the first sort of 15-20 seconds, he was trying to throw submissions up, triangles, arm bars, that sort of thing. It wasn't really washing with his opponent at the time, and I definitely don't think that sort of thing will wash or be very effective against a second-degree Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt like Michel Prazeres. The thing that I noticed a lot about Naurdiev on his back, though, is he allowed that pass from full guard to half guard to side control, and he allowed it quite easily as well. There wasn't really too much defense or too much resistance in trying to stop his opponent getting there. And we all know what Michel Prazeres will do once he's in side control, man. Like, that's a horrible position to be in for someone like when you're fighting someone like Prazeres. I just think that in this fight, Prazeres I was about to say he will be throwing the bombs to close the distance, but we saw in the Zach Cummins fight and the Bartosz Verbinski fight as well, that he has got good striking, technical striking. He can move in and out of range, especially the Zach Cummins fight, where I thought he won the majority of that fight on the feet. Just moving in and out of range, getting himself out of danger, having that awareness of the danger as well, coming in, throwing quick combinations, moving back out, angling, clinching up against the cage when he needs to. When things get tough, he has that plan B as well. So I just think all this flashy stuff that Naurdiev does, it ain't going to work on Prazeres. I can't see it working anyway. I just think Prazeres is going to be too smart. He's too savvy. He's a veteran in the highest point of mixed martial arts. He's got unbelievable skills on the mat. And I just feel that he's going to work his striking early. I don't know whether he is going to be technical like the Zach Cummins fight, or whether he's just going to rush in and start winging bombs. That's when Naurdiev backs off and starts to look really uncomfortable. At some point in this fight, though, Prazeres is going to get a hold of that single leg, or he's going to get a hold of that body lock. He's going to drag Naurdiev down to the mat. I mean, fuck, Prazeres could probably double leg a fucking elephant if he wanted to. You know what I mean? If he wants you to the mat and he gets hold of you, you're going down to that mat. He's that good. And man, I just see him passing, transitioning over Naurdiev. And my hot take for this card is I think he's going to grab another one of his north-south chokes. I think when he gets to side control, he might beat Naurdiev up a bit. And I think we see that transition to north-south. And I think we'll see Michel Prazeres grab another north-south submission. So, yeah, I've got Michel Prazeres to win this fight, and I've got him to win via submission. Now, in the next fight of the night, we've got a potential barn burner on our hands. We've got Damir Hadzovic versus the returning Polo Reyes. So, John, who have you got?
Yeah, like you've just said, this is a really exciting lightweight clash between two guys that are not shy when it comes to standing there and trading and just throwing bombs. And I mean, this fight for me, I think is going to be played out 100% on the feet. I don't think we're going to see anyone go for the takedown or even really attempt to clinch or anything. I just think it's going to be two guys just throwing hands, throwing kicks, and waiting to see which one drops if either of them. So for this fight, I'm going with Polo Reyes to get the win. Obviously, we haven't seen him for over a year. We saw him last in January of 2018 when he defeated Matt Frivola 1 minute into the first round. That was a crazy minute. I mean, if anyone hasn't seen that fight, or if you forgot about it, just go back and watch that 1 minute, man. I mean, they were just, from the very first bell, they were just throwing immediately. And yeah, just a really exciting fight. Rock Frivola. Frivola got back to his feet. Looked like he got his wits about him again, but then Reyes just put him away completely. But for me personally, I think the reason why I think Reyes is going to win this fight is purely due to his combinations and the combinations that he throws. He's got a nice jab, which he uses well, but he follows that jab up with the two. He'll throw in leg kicks. He'll throw in the left hook. He's got a very good left hook. He's got a very good check left hook as well. And he's got power in his right hand. I mean, he put Frivola down with one of those left hooks, and then the fight the punch that put him away was with his right hand. And he has got real power in those hands. I mean, we saw back at UFC 199, he put away Dong Hyun Ma with punches in the third round as well. So usually when we're getting into the later stages, there's worry about people tiring as their knockout power gone. We don't have to worry about that with. In this instance, and the fight prior to that as well against Arzamendia, he put him away in the first round with punches, and yeah, I just think that Hadzovic, I do like Hadzovic. I am a big fan of Hadzovic, but I think his striking isn't as fluent as Reyes. Hadzovic has got a good long jab, but quite often you'll only see him throw that jab and he'll just pump the jab out over and over. It doesn't really follow it up with combinations, which again, warning sign is if the fight goes the distance, will Reyes have just done more due to the fact that he's throwing more. Obviously, then you'd expect him to land more if he's throwing the combinations, and Hadzovic is just throwing that jab. And yeah, when he's throwing those long jabs, Reyes has got nice head movement. So he has to be careful of obviously him slipping the jab and landing an overhand or landing one of those left hooks if Hadzovic's right hand drops. You've got to be real wary because, like I mentioned previously, he's got a very dangerous left hook and which can connect. And when I look at the competition that Hadzovic has fought, he's fought some tough guys, but his wins have come over Nick Hein. I'm not particularly big on Nick Hein. Marcin Held, who he defeated in the third round with a vicious knee. Held's predominantly a grappler. And then his two losses have come to Mehmet Taisumov and Alan Patrick. So yeah, for me, I just think Reyes is going to do more on the feet. I think his combinations will rack up the scoring in the judges' eyes. I think he's got the power in his hands to finish the fight more so than Hadzovic. If the fight is going to be finished within the distance, I think it will be Reyes again who gets the win. So I just can't look past him in this. I also like he's got a nice low leg kick as well, which he mixes in with his combinations with his hands. So, but yeah, however this fight ends up, I do think it's going to be a really entertaining back and forth scrap. But I'm going with Polo Reyes to win this fight, and I think he might put Hadzovic away as well. I think he might catch him on the chin with one of those check left hooks when he's got the timing down on Hadzovic's jab, and yeah, I think he's going to put him away. So I'm going with Polo Reyes to get the win in this one via stoppage.
Yeah, man. First and foremost, I don't think this fight's going to hit the scorecards at all. I think they're going to stand in the middle. They're going to go at it, and I do think somebody's going to drop now. For me, that favours Polo Reyes because we've seen Polo Reyes in the past. You know, he's more than happy to get into a brawl. He's more than happy to stand and trade. He trusts his power. He trusts his accuracy. You know, sometimes it don't pay off, but you know, the majority of the time he can get his shots off and he can land, which is key because the dude hits hard as fuck. Now, For me, the better technical fight is actually Hadzovic, in my opinion. I think Hadzovic's his striking is more thought through. It's processed. I think he mixes things up a lot better as well. The problem I feel like Hadzovic is going to have in this fight, like you look at the Nick Hein fight. Now, I know Hein's not that type of striker. He is more of a grinder type of fighter. But the thing is, Hein was sort of on the same size as him in physique. So Hadzovic was able to to get in, to land strikes, but he could also land strikes on the outside if he needed to as well. He had options. But in this fight, he doesn't have those options. Polo Reyes is tall, he's long, he's rangy, and that's first and foremost, that's going to make Hadzovic have to close the distance to land on Reyes. He's not going to be able to potter about on the outside and throw strikes from the outside and work that way. He doesn't have that option. So, like I've just mentioned, the Nick Hein fight, he had options. In this fight, I don't think he does. I think if he wants to, to really win this fight, whether it be a knockout or take the fight on the judges' scorecards, first and foremost, he has to get inside because he's not going to land strikes from the outside. Now, once he's inside, that's where Polo Reyes has got a knack for making people brawl. So he'll start throwing wild, he'll start throwing fast, and like I say, he entices that brawl, and the majority of the fighters that he fights against accept that and start brawling. And like I say, even though Hadzovic is the better technical striker, when you're in that brawl, that technique does not count for as much as it does without you being in that brawl.
Yeah.
And Polo Reyes is therefore the brawler at that point. He's the one that, in my opinion, hits harder, and he's the one that will have the advantage. So for me, if Hadzovic can get a game going where he can be constantly moving in and out without taking damage, or at least too much damage, but getting his strikes off, I think that he's the possibilities there for winning the fight on the scorecards, because he would, in that situation, in my opinion, out-volume Polo Reyes. But the problem is, when he comes in, I see him getting hit. I just see him getting hit. I see Polo Reyes being aggressive. I see him Polo Reyes offering the brawl, and I see Damir Hadzovic accepting. So for that reason, I'm going to have to take Polo Reyes to win this fight, and I'm going to take him to win it via knockout. Now, in the next fight of the night, we've got Veronica Macedo versus Gillian Robertson. So, John, who have you got?
Yeah, got a fight with both fighters coming into this on the back of losses. I mean, Macedo really does need a win here, because I think it's that dreaded third loss in a row, and we all know what happens usually when you get three losses in a row, especially when you've just come into the UFC. I mean, she's faced a couple of tough opponents so far with in Ashley Evans-Smith and Andrea Lee, who ironically faced off at the weekend. Yeah, I mean, they're two tough opponents to start your UFC career with. She's only young. She's 23 years old. So, I mean, she has got time to go away and develop if she was to lose this fight and be cut by the UFC, which obviously we hope that never happens. But she's going up against another youngster who, for me, is the more well-rounded and better fighter. Robertson, obviously we know she trains at American Top Team. She lost the last fight against Mayra Bueno Silva. Now, for me, that fight went probably how she would have wanted it to go in the first round. She got Bueno Silva down. She held her down. She utilised her wrestling, her strong ground game, which really is where she tends to dominate. And yeah, I don't know whether it was just a little bit of inexperience or a lack of concentration. 5 seconds left, she was on top. She was in stack guard, and Mayra Bueno Silva just threw up a submission attempt, an armbar, and rolled through and forced the tap with 5 seconds left in the first round. And I think if you'd have asked Robertson prior to the fight how she'd ideally like the first 4 minutes and 50 seconds of round one to play out, it worked in her favour, and I think it went how she would want it to. Getting the takedown, strong on top, And yeah, like I said, I don't know whether it was just a lack of concentration or a little bit of a lack of inexperience, given her age, that the cause of defeat and that armbar to be locked on. But yeah, I think Robertson's going to get the win and get back in the win column in this fight. I mean, what I've seen from Macedo is she can get taken down. She spent a lot of her time against Andrea Lee on her back. She did have decent scrambles, and she was able to get back to her feet quite a lot of the time. A lot of the time we did see her do enough to push Andrea Lee off her, and then it was quite weird. I mean, there was a lot of stalemates where she was just lying on her back on the floor and Andrea Lee was standing over her, kicking away at the thighs and stuff. I mean, we saw that several times. And but yeah, so she does have decent scrambles, but she can be taken down, and sometimes she gets reckless with her striking. We saw against Lee, who was ducking under those strikes and getting the clinch or the body lock, and sometimes she was working around and taking the back. And I saw a few mistakes from Macedo when Andrea Lee was standing and had her back. She'd try and roll through and put herself in more danger than on the mat. And again, yeah, just maybe that's something that she's gone away and worked on. But all these things come obviously with age and experience, and the more times you're in there, the more you improve. But yeah, I did see some holes in her game, especially when it came to the grappling and the wrestling. And I think Robertson is the type of matchup where she can expose those weaknesses and get her to the ground. And following that loss to Mayra Bueno Silva, I think she'll be more focused on the ground. She'll concentrate more. She won't put herself in the at risk of things like the armbar from the back and things like that. So yeah, I do expect Robertson to take her down. I see it playing out quite similar to the Molly McCann fight. Actually, I think Macedo could have a little bit of success on the feet. But yeah, I do eventually see Robertson taking her down and working towards a submission and subsequently getting a submission. I think it's going to be another rear naked choke. I think Macedo will give up her back in one of the scrambles, and Robertson will lock in the rear naked choke and get the victory. So I'm going by Gillian Robertson to win via rear naked choke in the second round of this one.
Yeah, man, I'm going the other way here, and I was surprised, to be honest, because when I looked into this fight, I looked into it expecting to come out really liking Gillian Robertson. You know, I lost my bet on her in the last fight against Mayra Bueno Silva. That was tough to take, that, man, because, you know, let's not forget, if she'd have held on for another 3 seconds and didn't tap out, you know, I know that's easier said than done, but, you know, with the hypothetical situation, she did that. Mayra Bueno Silva had hurt her leg really badly. She wasn't coming back out that second round, so it was tough. But I disagree with you, man. Like, in that fight with Silva in Robertson's last fight, man, she was getting lit up on the feet, and I was worried. You know, I was happy when she started scoring the takedowns and stuff, but before that, prior to that, I was really, really worried. Silva was lighting her up on the feet. She was connecting with the shots. She was putting combinations together every time Robertson came forward. She was getting knocked back with strikes. Robertson actually did a really good job in that fight, in my opinion, of quickly adjusting and being able to close that distance effectively to get the takedown, because if she hadn't had that quick adjustment, I think she may have been finished via strikes. Now, Macedo, for me, when you look at the two losses that she's had in the UFC, Ashley Evans-Smith and Andrea Lee, as you've already mentioned, on paper, that looks really bad, but when you actually watch the fights, I don't think her performances were terrible at all. I think her striking looked nice, it looked crisp. In my opinion, it looked better than Mayra Bueno Silva's striking, so instantly for me, I'm thinking that Macedo's got the striking advantage over Robertson, definitely. And then, yes, Andrea Lee got her down a couple of times, so did Ashley Evans-Smith, but they never came easy. Like, they weren't easy to get her down, and I think Andrea Lee ended up resorting to the trusty head and arm throw to get her down to the mat, which is something that doesn't work most of the time, and if it does, it shouldn't work. And it's also not a type of takedown I think Gillian Robertson will try and attempt. You know, she's more of a traditional, she's got more of a traditional wrestling takedown base than these head and arm throws. But I think that she's gonna have a tough time getting Macedo down. And if she does get Macedo down, Macedo's a legit brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well, so she can definitely hold her own on the mat. I think she could hit some sweeps, some reversals, or she could stand back up. The biggest gap in skill in this fight is on the feet for sure. And I think as long as it's on the feet, I think Macedo's going to be winning this fight. I think Gillian Robertson's going to end up getting desperate for takedowns. I think she's going to start shooting in without setting the entries up correctly. I think she might shoot in from a little far out sometimes. I think she will get her entries right sometimes as well. We may even see her put Macedo on her back, but I don't think it's going to be enough to sway the judges for a decision win in this fight. I mean, she could submit Macedo, you know, she has got submissions on her record, but like I say, Macedo's a good grappler as well, and I just don't see that happening. I do see this fight hitting the scorecards, but I do see Macedo piecing Gillian Robertson up on the feet, and I think ultimately when we get to the scorecards, or if we get to the scorecards, I think that's going to be the difference. The difference will be the damage and the volume of strikes opposed to the one or two takedowns that Macedo may or may not have stood up from pretty quickly. So I'm taking Veronica Macedo to win this fight, and I'm going to take her to win via decision. Now in the next fight of the night, we've got one that I'm really, really looking forward to. We've got Daniel Teymur versus the Englishman, Chris Fishgold. So John, who are you taking in this one?
Yeah, this is, again, well, how many times have we said this already tonight on the podcast, but this is another really exciting fight and one that I'm also really looking forward to. Got Daniel Teymur going up against Chris Fishgold. Both these guys do really need a victory to obviously really just get that foothold in their UFC career. I mean, I know Fishgold has only fought once so far in the UFC, lost his debut. He looked good in the I mean, for the first, I know he got finished in the first round against Calvin Kattar, but man, he looked good for the first three and a half minutes of that fight, and he was lighting Kattar up a bit. And I don't know if he just got overly aggressive on his UFC debut, and yeah, he just seemed to just suffer a bit of an adrenaline dump, and he slowed down a little bit, and Kattar started getting back into it, lighting him up with that jab, and then caught him with the big shot behind the ear, took away his equilibrium, and then finished him with the strikes on the ground. Now, Teymur's an interesting fighter. We know that he's got that kickboxing background, that Muay Thai background. He's won a lot of championships in those fields before, and yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how he fares in this fight with Fishgold's pressure and how Fishgold's like style. He's pretty wild with his hands. He throws, like, he wings a lot of shots, and he throws everything with bad intentions, with knockout power, and yeah, whether Teymur will be able to get the timing on that early on, I think depends on how this fight plays out, and if he can get the timing, and if he can circle off those flurries from Fishgold, I think he'll have success in here. But I mean, it's a real close one to call. I'm edging towards Chris Fishgold in this fight, and I think he's going to. The reason why is I think he's going to grind on Teymur and wear him down. We saw in the Teymur fight against Danny Henry. That was a fantastic fight. I think he won fight of the night, if I remember correctly. And man, those two were throwing bombs at each other, hitting each other with everything they've got. And yeah, by the midway through the second round, third round, Henry was able to land some takedowns. Teymur was visibly very tired. It was, yeah, I mean, if Fishgold can can have a similar game plan to that Danny Henry game plan, and if he can get through that first round, get some takedowns. I mean, we saw Fishgold, albeit briefly, take Keita down in the first round, pushed him up against the fence, got a nice takedown, shot underneath the jab, and took him down. And if he can do that, if he can hold him down and wear on him and tire him out, I think we can see Chris Fishgold win this fight and win it in a similar fashion to Danny Henry by. Albeit it may not be quite as exciting as that fight, because like I said, that fight was wild, man. But yeah, I can see Fishgold getting I can see him getting the win in this fight. I mean, technically he won't be the better striker, as we know with Teymur. We know that he's got a very good kickboxing background. We know he throws a lot of kicks. That's the one thing that Fishgold has to avoid is staying in that kicking range. He either has to be outside of that, dart in, land his flurries, go for takedown, or if he doesn't go for the takedown, dart back out after he's landed those flurries, or he's got to be in Teymur's face where he can't throw those kicks, and that would be my other worry. Besides Teymur getting the timing on the Fishgold flurries, is Fishgold ensuring that he doesn't stay in that kicking range, because if he does, it's going to be a long night, and I think he'll go on to lose a decision if he does just stand in that kicking range, because Teymur will just kick the legs, mixes in the body kicks, mixes in the head kicks well, throws in that side kick as well, front kick. I mean, he'll just keep Fishgold at range and keep racking up the score. But yeah, I think Fishgold will be able to get inside that range with his pressure, with his strikes, with his heavy hands and his flurries, and he'll be able to wear on Teymur. And I think Chris Fishgold is going to win this fight. And Fishgold's a legitimate guy on the ground as well. I know Teymur's got some submissions on the regional scene, but Fishgold is a legitimate grappler as well. I mean, if people don't know him, the former Cage Warriors champion, he fights in a lot of he competes in a lot of submission grappling tournaments over here as well. He's got wins via rear naked choke, guillotines. He competed against one of my guys, Tom Breeze, one of the Birmingham boys. Albeit Breeze won that in a submission grappling tournament quite recently. I think that was last year. But yeah, I mean, he's legit on the ground as well. So if he does get this to the ground, there's the submission threat from Fishgold as well. But yeah, I'm going with Chris Fishgold to win this fight. If he puts Teymur away, I think it'll be in the third round, similar to the Julio Arce fight when Teymur got stopped for a rear naked choke, and I can see finishing in a similar fashion, either going the distance and Fishgold grinding out the win, or Fishgold wearing Teymur down and getting a submission late in the third round. But I'm going with Chris Fishgold to win this fight.
Yeah, I like Chris Fishgold as well. In hindsight, obviously hindsight being the beautiful thing, it was a pretty bad pick when I picked him to beat Keita. But the reasons why I picked him to beat Keita was because of his style. He is one of those real good submission grapplers that will wing bombs. He'll be aggressive, and it's like I say time and time again on this podcast, it's not to be the better technical striker. It's not to try and outpoint his opponent. It's to try and close the distance to get the fight to the mat. That's what these aggressive wrestling submission grapplers, that's what they do. They throw the bombs to back their opponent up. The hands come up to the chin, then comes a level change, easier on the hips, they're against the cage. These are all the sort of things that these wrestlers and grapplers do to get the fight to the mat. Now, sometimes in Fishgold's fights, he's the one hunting to close the distance. He's the one that has to work to get the fight close, to get a hold of his opponent, to get him to the mat in whatever way he needs to. But in actual fact, Teymur in this fight will also help him out with that, because Teymur's an aggressive striker. And listen, for 7.5 minutes, the dude's quick, the dude's accurate, the dude's fast, and the dude won't stop moving. And like I say, if Fishgold wants that early takedown, I think it'll be there for him, because Teymur won't be the one on the outside striking. Teymur will will fight fire with fire. He'll get in there, he'll stand and bang, and he believes in his power and his speed. And like you've already mentioned, John, he is definitely going to be the better striker. 100% is going to be. He is the faster striker. He's the more accurate striker. I think he holds more power as well. Now, like I say, it's what Chris Fishgold does with that's really going to determine where this fight goes, because if Fishgold takes all this aggression that I believe is going to come from Teymur, then he can use that body weight against him to take him down to the mat. He can do a variety of things, but the problem with Teymur, and I touched upon it just a second ago, when I said that he's got 7.5 minutes of complete and utter solid output, is that he does tire in pretty much every fight that we've seen. And when I say tire, I mean really tire, to the point where his volume drops dramatically, his power goes, his speed isn't there, he's available to close the distance on very easily. He'll get taken down to the mat, he'll get worked on top, and it's that sort of tired where he does pretty much shut down. Now, having said that, Chris Fishgold hasn't also got an amazing gas tank. But I feel like it's going to be one of those fights where you don't see Chris Fishgold slow down so much because of how much Teymur slows down. We see that time and time again where a fighter's actually got a pretty bad gas tank. It's just you don't really see it because his opponent is normally more tired. And I feel like it's going to be one of these situations. I think early on, Teymur's going to be a big problem for Fishgold. I think Fishgold's really got to close the distance early on if he wants to make this fight as easy as possible for himself. But at some point in this fight, the takedowns will come. I do think Teymur's susceptible to it. I do think in regards to European versus American grappling and wrestling, Chris Fishgold isn't, he's not at the level of, for example, what Cater's was when he last fought him. But listen, his grappling, his submission grappling and his wrestling is definitely going to be too much for Daniel Teymur in this fight. I do think that Chris Fishgold finds the takedowns at some point. I do think he enjoys some top control. If Fishgold is the one dominating on top for the majority of the rounds, I think he's got the cardio to do that all day. I think his cardio really diminishes when he struggles to get the fight to the mat. But like I say, I think the takedowns come one way or another, winging the bombs, closing the distance, or Teymur closes it for him. I think the takedowns come. I think he works Teymur on the mat. I think he breaks him slowly as the minutes go by. I'm not sure whether he'll get him out in round one, but I think at some point in the fight, Chris Fishgold will finish it, and I think he'll finish it via submission. So I'm taking for Chris Fishgold to win via submission. Now, in the next fight of the night, we've got Carlo Pedersoli Jr. versus Dwight Grant. John, who have you got?
Yeah, this is another interesting fight. I mean, we've seen a bit of Carlo Pedersoli now. He's fought twice in the UFC. He beat Brad Scott on his UFC debut. I'm pretty sure that was late notice call up as well, if I remember rightly, back in May last year, and he won the split decision. But then he put on a really good display actually in that fight, and which I think surprised many people. And yeah, he went into Alex Oliveira fight, and I was really interested to see how he'd fare against a seasoned UFC fighter such as Oliveira. And man, Oliveira just wiped him out within about 40 seconds of the first round and put him to sleep. So it'd be interesting to see how he comes back from that loss. And he's going up against the guy Dwight Grant. Man, I was really disappointed with Dwight Grant when we saw him against Zach Otto in December. I picked Dwight Grant in that fight, and I think deflated is the word that I felt. That was a really weird fight, and he just couldn't seem to get anything going. He didn't really seem sharp. I don't know if this is what we mentioned a lot of the time on making your debut in the under the bright lights and things, whether you'll make that step up and shine, or whether you just the occasion just seems to get the better of you, and it seemed to get the better of him in that Zach Otto fight. And it was a close split decision. I seem to remember thinking at the time that Grant had done enough to win. I didn't actually watch the fight back actually in the build up to this, so it'd be interesting to
Grant
get your.
definitely won that fight.
Yeah, I do seem to remember at the time it was a bit of a robbery, but yeah, so it'd be interesting to see how he comes back from that fight. I mean, there's high hopes coming out of he trains at American Kickboxing Academy, AKA, and there's a lot of good things been said about him. I know Daniel Cormier is very, very high on him. He's an athletic guy. He's powerful. AKA, you're going to get good wrestling base coming out of that gym. And do you know what? I think he's going to come out, and I genuinely think he's going to come out, and I think he's going to blitz Pedersoli. I think he's going to I think he's going to put that first UFC fight behind him. And I think he's going to really come out and make a statement. And I think he's going to put Pedersoli away early. I think he's going to use that power, that wrestling. I don't know whether he'll go to that wrestling straight away, or whether he'll just utilise his strikes, his strength, his power, his height. He's tall. But yeah, I just seeing catching Pedersoli similar to how Oliveira did, and I really think that Dwight Grant is going to put Pedersoli away early here. I think he's going to make a real statement. I've just got one of those feelings where I think he's going to come out from that first bell, and he's going to put on a high pace, and he's going to have learned from that fight against Otto that you can't take your foot off the gas, or you can't be hesitant or anything like that. And I think he's going to come out, and I think he's going to put on a performance. And I really think he puts Pedersoli away with strikes. I think it'll be via ground and pound, and I think he's going to either put him down with a strike and follow up with ground and pound, or I think he's going to take him down and just beat him up with ground and pound on the mat. But yeah, I think Grant's going to get this fight finished. I think he's going to get it finished in the first round. So I'm going with Dwight Grant to win this one via knockout.
Yeah, man. I mean, I've never been one of the people that has been massively high on Carlo Pedersoli. Now, I'm not saying he's a bad fighter. I just feel that he had a lot of unnecessary hype on him, at least from some people anyway. And I don't know. I just always thought that he's just an okay fighter. Now, you look at Pedersoli's record, his last 3 fights. Nicholas Dalby going to a split in Cage Warriors, that doesn't really scream impressive. Brad Scott was a split decision, the right decision, but again a very close fight with Brad Scott, again doesn't scream impressive. Then getting starched, and rightly so, by Cowboy Oliveira. Cowboy will do that to a lot of people, and that to me showed that there's levels in this game. Now, I'm not saying Dwight Grant's at the level of Alex Oliveira, because he's not, but I'm just not massively high on Pedersoli. Again, I just think he's an okay fighter that will win fights in the UFC. I just don't think, I'd be very surprised if if he ever started breaching the top 15 or anything like that. Dwight Grant, again, the dude's not young. He's 34. He's young in the fight game, so obviously he's got years from that perspective. But I just think he's going to be explosive in this fight. Like I've just said to you, he was fucking robbed against Zak Otto. It was a disgusting decision. I just don't understand it for the life of me. But sometimes, shit happens. This is MMA. As they always say, you don't leave it in the hands of the judges. But for me, like I say, I think Dwight Grant's quick. I think he's explosive, and I think that's what's going to win him this fight here. I don't see this fight hitting the mat. I know you said you do. I don't. I think it's going to be a striking battle. I think Pedersoli's going to be trying to come out and be technical. I think Dwight Grant's going to take a little bit of time to get a read on Pedersoli, because I know I've said that I'm not massively high on him, but the dude can fight technical and strategically, and I think Dwight Grant will just need a little bit of time. But like I say, that explosiveness and that power, I think, is going to pay dividends in this fight. I think Pedersoli will start off the better. I think Dwight Grant will take over. the mistake Dwight Grant would make in this fight would be to not be patient whilst Pedersoli's, starting to get his technique off, trying to rush that knockout, because what will happen is that power will drain out of him with his gas tank. So if Dwight Grant does that early and tries to knock Pedersoli out before it's time to knock him out, I can see that as a path to victory for Pedersoli. Pedersoli withstanding that and just remaining calm, remaining technical, and taking over late in the fight, and ultimately winning on the scorecards if he doesn't finish Dwight Grant. But I don't think Dwight Grant's going to come out that way. He did that against Zach Otto. He should have won the fight, but he didn't. He paid the price. I think he learns from it. I think he's a little bit more patient, but I think, like I've mentioned, eventually that explosiveness and that power, I think, is gonna pay dividends for him. So I'm going to take Dwight Grant to win, and I'm going to take him to win via knockout. Now, in the next fight of the night, we've got Magomed Ankalaev, my personal favourite, versus Klidson Abreu. So, John, who have you got?
Yeah, I'm sure you're still having nightmares about
Always will, man. Always will.
Ankalaev and Paul Craig fight, and like we mentioned with Ankalaev before the Marcin Prachnio fight, that Paul Craig loss, although it's a loss and it's a loss on the record, when I'm looking at these fights and I'm weighing up each fighter and looking at each fight, man, that it's as good as a win, because it's the only loss on his record. And I mean, for 4 minutes and 59 seconds, he absolutely 100% beat Paul Craig.
I'll give you the email to my bookie if you want. Go and talk to them.
And beat him convincingly. So, yeah, it was, to be honest, it was like I mentioned earlier with the Robertson fight. I think it was just a lack of concentration, and we've covered this ground before the Prachnio fight, that you'd have imagined with 1 second left that his corner would have been screaming at him not to tap. But yeah, he did, and the loss goes down in the history books. But I think he'll learn from that mistake, and he'll just get the business done earlier in the fight than leaving it to the last second of the last round, as we saw with the Prachnio fight, where he looked very good, and he did all his work standing pretty much in that fight, and landed a beautiful head kick and follow-up punches to put Prachnio away in the first round. And I was very impressed with his striking in that fight as well. He showed that he's not just a one-trick pony. He's not just a wrestler, hold you down, grind you out kind of guy. And yeah, he looked good in that fight. Now, he's going up against an opponent who's, again, making their UFC debut, and another guy who's fought previously at M1. He's fought on Brave, and he's predominantly a submission guy. He's a grappler, and I'll be honest, I haven't seen a great deal of him. I've seen bits and bobs from his fight in M1 and from some of his fights in Brave, but outside of that, I haven't seen much at all. But what I can tell you is he's a dangerous wrestler and grappler. He's dangerous on the mat. He's very dangerous on the mat, but I'll keep this pretty short and sweet. Ankalaev is going to win this fight for me. I think Ankalaev, from what I've seen, is the better wrestler. I think he's fought better opponents previously. I think he can win the fight in more ways than his opponents, and I just think the only threat that we're going to see is Farias throwing up a submission off the ground and catching Ankalaev with something similar to Paul Craig. But as I mentioned a minute ago, I think Ankalaev has learned his lesson from that, and I don't think he'll put himself in any kind of dangerous position. And I see this fight playing out quite similarly to the fight we saw a couple of weeks ago. I can't remember the names off the top of my head, but one of the guys, the Brazilian guys from the Brazilian Contender Series, really dangerous submission guy. His name escapes.
About Vinicius Mamouche.
Yes, I am indeed. Yeah, I think he's dangerous like him on the ground. I don't think he's quite as dangerous as him on the ground, but yeah, I just think Ankalaev will probably keep this fight standing, because I think he's wrestling. I think he can take the fight to the mat if he wants to, but I don't think he will, because that's where the submission threat is. So I think he'll just use his defensive wrestling where needs be, and win this fight standing. And I do think he's going to get another stoppage. I do think it's going to be via strikes again. I'm going with Ankalaev to win this fight. I think it'll be the second round. I think the first round may be a bit of a feeling out process, just making sure that he doesn't do anything to potentially get taken down or put himself in a vulnerable position. But then, yeah, I think after that, I think second round, I think he starts to really show off his better striking. And yeah, I'm going with Ankalaev to win this fight in the second round via knockout.
Yeah, this kid Klidson is very interesting. First and foremost, I think he's lying about his age, because the dude does not look 26 years old.
No, he doesn't.
But he's good. He's very, very good. He's got good takedowns, good entries. His striking's very sketchy, but you know that tends to happen with these, again, young fighters. That are really good on the mat, and you know, wrestling, submission grappling. You know, he trains out with Evolucio Thai, which is a very, very good gym over in Brazil. So that striking will come in time. He's obviously only young, so we think, and you know, he's got time to improve for sure. The weird thing for this fight though is the Dagestani-born Russian is going to be the one, in my opinion, that has got to keep the fight on the feet, because Ankalaev, although like I said, he has got the typical wrestling and grappling of a Dagestani, he's also got a good stand-up as well, and we saw that against Pratniar. He was sharp, his timing was on point, he was accurate, he was powerful, and the reason why I think Ankalaev might actually be the one in danger in this fight on the mat and on the takedowns and stuff is because you look back to that Paul Craig fight, and early in that fight, Paul Craig was having some success with the takedowns. He was having some success with the grappling. Now, Ankalaev ended up reversing a lot of the positions and stuff on the mat with Paul Craig. Like, I can remember there was a double leg that Ankalaev completed whilst he was on two knees, which was pretty cool to see. He's got, you know, that's the caliber of wrestler that he is. But I think Paul Craig can be quite sloppy on the mat in regards to losing position, so his balance between transitions isn't, you know, is very off. I think he makes mistakes for him to leave himself exposed to be swept or reversed, whereas this kid Klidson, I think, is a lot more solid on the mat. So basically what I'm trying to say is if you take Paul Craig out of that fight and you put Klidson in there, I think we see a different result, if I'm honest. Maybe not Klidson winning, you know, obviously Paul Craig won that fight, but I see a lot of things playing out very differently. Klidson is a more complete grappler, and I think Ankalaev, as long as he's got his takedown defense on point, I think he should be able to win this fight. I still wouldn't advise taking Klidson down. I don't think Klidson's a huge threat off his back in regards to submissions, but finding the space and finding the technique on bottom to reverse positions is something that Klidson's better at than submitting off his back, if that makes sense. And I'm telling you, if Klidson gets on top, he will work Ankalaev. Like, I'm not joking, he's good. And he's also got a really cool submission that I want to talk about as well. You'll see on his record, he's got a lot of straight arm bars. Now, what he does is he gets into mount, and he goes into high mount. And from there, you would normally think these straight arm bars, he's hopping off mount, he's giving up that good position, potentially to grab a submission, and if it doesn't work out, then he's lost that good position. He can get swept and reversed. This is a mistake that some grapplers make, but he doesn't do that. He gets into the high mount, and I'll try and explain this as best I can. It might be easier for, you know, if you're listening, you want to see it, to go and watch his tape, but basically, he gets into the high mount and he uses his own inside of his thigh to lift the arm up and bend it over the thigh to cause the straight arm bar. It's crazy. Like, the first time I saw it, I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. And then I saw it again in a second fight. I was like, holy shit, this guy actually like does this. Like, that's one of his submissions. And then I saw it a third time. I was like, okay, this is this is pretty cool. it's weird. Like some grapplers have these crazy specialist submissions that we don't really see, and it's fun to watch, man. Like I say, if you're listening, you want to watch it, go and watch the tape. It's cool, man. But I'm favouring Ankalaev in this fight. I do think Ankalaev keeps it standing. I do think that he'll outstrike Klidson. I think if the fight goes late, I think Ankalaev's cardio will hold up better, and at that point, I think it would be safe to start taking Klidson down. But if I'm honest, I think he knocks him out before it even gets to that stage. So I've got Ankalaev to win, and I'm going to take him to win via knockout. Now in the next fight of the night, we've got Jon Dodson versus Petr Yan. John, who have you got?
Oh man, I'm really excited for seeing the return of Petr Yan. As we've mentioned before, previous podcasts, big on this guy. He's got a great future ahead of him. He's real top level. Whether he can be a champion in the UFC is yet to be seen, but he's definitely got the potential to be in that top 5. That's for certain. And he's going up against a tough opponent here. Actually, it's a good step up in competition for him. I think it's good matchmaking by the UFC going up against Jon Dodson, a perennial contender in the UFC, albeit he's dropped off the last couple of years. He's coming into the fight off the back of one of those lovely win-loss, which we all know that I like to keep the sequence going. He lost his last fight to Jimmy Rivera, but I would like to say that I'm going to pick him for the win in this one, but I'm not. I'm going with Petr Yan to win this fight, and I just think Jon Dodson. He used to be 3-4 years ago. He used to have knockout power. He still is extremely quick, but you can just tell he's lost a little bit of that quickness now as time goes on. I mean, like I mentioned, he's still extremely quick, but yeah, I just don't quite think he's as quick as he used to be, and it'll be interesting to see how he comes into his fight. So I'm sure I saw Yan a few weeks ago state on social media that Dodson better not be running away from him all fights. Dodson does have a tendency to spend a lot of the time just jumping in, landing a couple of quick shots and jumping back out and being elusive and then rinse and repeat. And yeah, sometimes worse his fight, as you can probably tell looking at his last 6 fights. So he lost to Jimmy Rivera via decision. He beat Pedro Munoz via split decision. Lost to Marlon Moraes split decision. Defeated Eddie Wineland via decision. Lost to John Lineker via split decision. And then the fight prior to that was the last fight that he won via a stoppage against Manny Gamburian with a first round punch. And yeah, with that style, it's a dangerous game because you don't know how the judges are going to see. I think it was the Rivera fight. People were hyped for that fight, and the fans were booing and things because Dodson he plays it clever. He doesn't really like to engage, and that's my only worry again in this fight with Yan, because Yan will just march forward. He's got no issue with that at all. Whether Dodson just keeps catching with a jab, catching with a 1-2, lands a leg kick and gets out of there quickly and just racks up the scores and it looks good in the judges' eyes. But yeah, that's for me is the one area where Dodson can get this win, but I just don't see it happening. Yan, he's good, man. He's quick himself. He throws good combinations. His boxing's really crisp. He mixes up the head kick, the high head kick well. And he's good wrestling as well. I mean, he shoots a really good blast double. He's got a good low single as well. We saw him time Andrade a couple of times in their fight, if I remember rightly, and also in the Jinsu Son fight, which was one hell of a fight. If people have forgot about that fight, go back and watch that, man, because that was just crazy. Both these guys just beating the hell out of each other. Jan throwing everything he had at Jinsu Son, and Son was just smiling back at him and loving every second of it. So go back and watch that fight if you forgot about it, or if you've got a spare 15 minutes on, because that's one hell of a fight. But yeah, I think Jan will be able to do enough in this fight to get the win. I think it's going to go to a decision just because of the way that Dodson fights, and he doesn't really engage. He doesn't give away many opportunities to get caught and get hurt, and yeah, I do just think Jan will be able to. He's got good footwork, as I mentioned, with his boxing, and I just think he will be able to cut off the cage and match Dodson's footwork and movement, and land the more significant strikes, which I think will ultimately sway the decision to go in his favour. So I do think this fight will go the distance. I think John Dodson will use his usual strategy of in and out, a lot of bouncing around, a lot of quick movement around the octagon to avoid his opponent and land his strikes, get out without taking much damage. But yeah, I think Jan will be able to do enough to pressure him, close him down, cut off the cage with his angles and his footwork, and yeah, just get the nod in the judge's eyes through the more significant strikes. So I'm going with Petr Yan to win this fight via decision.
Yeah, I think it's smart matchmaking from the UFC, man. For me, anyway, in my eyes, it's pretty clear what they've done. They've taken the guy with the hype, the guy that's improving, the guy that is looking so good at the minute, and they're matching him up with the guy that's on the way down, guy that was at the top, the guy that's got name value. He's not totally declined. Again, each week we tend to talk about the stage of decline. He is declining. He's not totally declined and he's not shot, but he is definitely declining, John Dodson. So basically they've matched one guy on the way up with another guy on the way down, and the meeting perfectly at the right time to give the UFC exactly what they want, which is, in my opinion, the Petr Yan win. And I think that is what is going to happen. Petr Yan, man, like I say, he's improving each fight. He's looking more phenomenal. Look, just go back and watch what he did to Douglas de Andrade. Man, people don't do that to Andrade. He absolutely obliterated him to the point where Andrade couldn't continue. He put that much of a beating on him. It seems like every fight, Petr Yan gets quicker, he gets more accurate, his combinations are timed perfectly, he doesn't waste shots, he's energy efficient, he doesn't mind if he has to wait for you to come in, because when you come in, he'll fucking hit you with a combination. If he wants to go first, that's fine. He's durable. You look at the Jinsu Son fight, like you've just mentioned, he took damage, and yet hard damage as well, like to the point where you were thinking, I bet Son was thinking, what have I got to do to put this guy away? I mean, Petr Yan would have also been thinking that of Son as well, but the point is, Yan is just looking so good right now. It's really, really hard to pick against him. Dodson, he was up there with the best of the best. He was quick. He was powerful. He was borderline untouchable. But the move up in weight, I think, it took away all of his, well, not all of it, but most of his power. He seemed to have lost a lot of power when he moved up in weight. That didn't translate up a weight for him. And then the older he's getting, the slower he's getting. He's starting to rack up a little bit in age. He's starting to rack up in fight years as well. And like I say, I just think it's showing right now to the point where I think even Dodson knows it. And like we saw in the Rivera fight, Dodson very, very rarely engaging, really just trying to attack as and when he could. And to be honest with you, after we've now seen where Rivera's at, I genuinely think Jimmy Rivera's best days are behind him as well. I'm not trying to say that Jimmy Rivera is declining, because I don't think he is, but I think his better days are behind him for sure. So when, if you've got that opinion the same as me, you then also start thinking, well, how impressive was actually that, how bad was that loss actually to Jimmy Rivera from John Dodson's perspective? Basically, do you think that Petr Yan can do exactly what Jimmy Rivera did or better? Absolutely, I do. Like, I think if Yan fought Rivera now, he would light him the fuck up. And I think that Well, for a start, Rivera's blueprinted exactly how to beat Dodson, just in case anybody didn't know. And I just think Jan can do it better than Rivera. I think he'll be quicker than Rivera. I think his movement in and out of the pocket will be better than Rivera's. I think he'll hold more power than Rivera. I think his cardio is better than Rivera's. His accuracy, everything that Petr Yan does, I just think will be at levels above what where Rivera was. And I'm not throwing any shade on Rivera. I still think he's a great fighter. It's just Petr Yan is an insanely good MMA boxer, and I think he's one of the best MMA boxers in MMA today. I think there's very few that are better than him, and I just think this is a horrible fight for Dodson. Obviously, I'm going Petr Yan to win, and do you know what? I don't think he puts Dodson away. I think if Dodson decides to step in and really trade with Petr Yan and really give this a good go, I think Yan would knock him out in that type of fight. But I think we see another fight where Dodson's on the back foot the majority of the fight. I just think with Petr Yan, he's not the type of fighter to get frustrated, to rush things, to really make mistakes in that aspect. I think he'll be patient. I think if Dodson wants to run, he'll let him run. He'll keep chasing him down. And even if no punches are landed or anything like that, Jan's still going to be winning the fight on aggression. And then when it does come a time to exchange and to land, I just think Jan's quicker and more powerful, and that will, play a part. I think it goes to the judges' scorecards purely because of how Dodson fights in 2018/19. So yeah, I'm taking Petr Yan to win. I'm taking him to win via decision. Now in the next fight of the night, we've got Liz Carmouche versus Lucie Pudilova, who's fighting at home. So John, who have you got to win?
Yeah, we're going to see Liz Carmouche make her annual octagon walk by the looks of things, to take on the hometown girl, Lucie Pudilova. And it's an interesting fight because, like I say, Carmouche, 35 years old now. When you look, she looked good in the last fight. Her last fight was a victory over Jennifer Maia. She won by unanimous decision. But yeah, I mean, she fought Maia in 2018. Alexis Davis, she lost a split decision to 2017. She defeated Caitlin Chukagian via split decision 2016. Defeated Lauren Murphy, unanimous decision 2015. Then she lost to Miesha Tate 2014. Alexis Davis 2013. I mean, this woman does not fight very often. And as you get older, and especially in these smaller weight classes, time does catch up with you. And although you may not think it when they're training and things like that, you do just slow down and yeah, when you get in there and step in the octagon, we do sometimes see a real change in I wouldn't say fighter ability, but just you just seem to look and think, these fighters lost that 10% since the last time we saw them in there. So it'd be interesting to see how it plays out with Carmouche. I think we know what we're going to try and what we're going to see from her, and that's the takedown. She's going to try and use her wrestling to win this fight. She against Maia, she closed the distance well. She got some good trip takedowns. She closed the distance really quickly and yeah, just got a hold of Maia and took her down, held her down, and did well on top to grind out the win. And it's going to be interesting to see how Pudilova approaches this fight, because she's tall, she's got a long reach, she's got although she's only got a couple of inches over Carmouche, she just seems to have a bigger frame than a lot of these flyweights. And obviously she's previously fought at bantamweight as well. Her last fight was against Aldana at bantamweight, which she lost by split decision. So it'd be interesting to see obviously how the cut down to flyweight is for her, for starters, and how she fills out, because I mean she could come in quite big with this being her first cut down to flyweight and that naturally big frame. So the key for victory for Pudilova is to pump that jab, maintain that distance from Carmouche, not let Carmouche close the distance and grab a hold of her, because I think if Carmouche gets in there, grabs a hold of her, she will take Pudilova down. And I do feel that she has the ability to hold her down as well. I think she has the ability to keep it on the mat for the entirety of a round. And yes, it's really a case of Pudilova avoiding those takedowns at all costs. Now, we've seen Pudilova likes to throw that front kick out a lot as the range finder and as the distance management tool for herself. The risk she has in this fight with that is obviously her kicks getting caught. If Carmouche can catch one of those kicks, she can get the takedown off the back of it, or at least close the distance off the back of it. Again, if Pudilova's just throwing those front kicks out there as feelers, Carmouche can again use footwork to evade the kick and close the distance and get a hold of Pudilova. And then finally with the jab as the rangefinder, if she can use her head movement and slip the jab or shoot under the jab for the takedown, I think it's going to be a tough night for Pudilova. And ultimately that's why I'm going with Liz Carmouche to win this fight. I do think that the hometown fans will be disappointed come the end of the fight, but I do just see Carmouche. She's a much better wrestler in my opinion, and I do just see her being able to get the takedown. She got takedowns against Maya, and against her previous opponents. We've seen Chikagian and Lauren Murphy. Recent wins, we've seen her get takedowns, and yeah, I do just think that she has the ability to get the fight to the mat and keep it there. And I mean, she had a lot of top time and top control over Jennifer Meyer, and the question is Meyer's get up game from the bottom better than Pudilova's? I think possibly yes, it is. So that if she couldn't get up from bottom, or had difficulties getting up from the bottom, and if she was getting taken down regularly, why would and how will Pudilova overcome that in this fight? And I just think that over the course of 3 rounds, Carmouche will be able to get takedowns and rack up the scores. And unless we see a case of the hometown cooking and a bit of the hometown favouritism, I do think we'll see Carmouche get the nod via decision. I think she'll do enough over the course of 3 rounds on the ground, and have enough top control to control the majority of the fight and get the nod in the judges' eyes. So I'm going with Liz Carmouche to win this fight via decision.
Yeah, I agree, man, and it's very rare for me to pick against a fighter that has got the style of Liz Carmouche. As I've mentioned it multiple times tonight on this podcast and on other podcasts as well. She's a fighter that will use her strikes to go forward, to close the distance, and clinch up and get the fight to the mat. That's Liz Carmouche's game. She's very powerful and relentless for the division. She always has been. That's always been a game. It's never really been any secret, and it's one of those styles where her opponent will have a training camp and they'll train to defend the takedowns and get away from the cage and exit and angle and disengage when she closes up. But it's so much easier said than done, and this is the problem with Liz Carmouche, that she is a problem for other fighters. And Lucie Pudilova is a fighter that I actually like a lot, by the way, and the fight with Irina Aldana is not talked about enough. That was one of the fights of last year, if not the fight of last year.
Fantastic.
There's not, I mean, obviously I love MMA, it's my passion, and it's my drive and everything else, but there's not many fights that will literally have me grinning from ear to ear throughout the entire fight, and that Pudilova and Aldana fight did exactly that. I was on the edge of my seat, I was smiling. The people that are with were just like, oh, holy fuck, what's happening? This is crazy. It can't get any crazier. And then it gets crazier. Pudlova's game, man. She's absolutely game for a war, for a grind, whatever. I think she's also quite difficult to take down, but I don't think that'll stop Carmouche from taking her down. I just think it'll make Carmouche work a little bit. I could see a scenario where Carmouche wins round 1, she wins round 2 just, but then she's tired from the amount of work that Pudlova's making her do, and then Pudlova could probably win that 3rd round. And like you've mentioned, the hometown cooking and all that, if that 2nd round or the 1st round, if one of those rounds is close and Pudlova wins the 3rd round, you know, we could be seeing an upset on the scorecards. But, well, it wouldn't be an upset in the arena, but you know what I mean. Yeah. For me, it's hard to pick against someone like Liz Carmouche. I just see her getting the takedowns. If she can get Pudlova tired or mentally broken, because it happens to fighters. It's nothing against them. When you're getting taken down constantly and you can't get back up to your feet, I can't even imagine what must be going through the head, like the frustration, and then, you know, you've trained a full camp for this and you're not really getting anything off that you want to get off, and I can totally get that. And I could see a potential situation like that if Pudlova is getting or can't get back up to her feet after constantly getting taken down. So, yeah, it's hard to pick against Carmouche. It's a close fight. Would it surprise me if Pudlova won? No, it wouldn't. But I think Carmouche does enough with the takedowns and the top control to edge a win on the judges' scorecard. So I'm taking Liz Carmouche to win, and I'm taking her to win via decision. Now, in the next fight of the night, we've got Jean Vellante against Michel Oleksichuk. John, who have you got?
Yeah, this is again. I keep saying this time and time again, but another interesting fight. This is between these guys in the light heavyweight division. Jean Vellante making his return. We last saw him in the Octagon in October, where he defeated Ed Herman via split decision. Again, he's a guy who a lot of his fights, especially in recent years, go to the decision, and they're extremely close one way or the other. I mean, he won that fight over Ed Herman, split decision. Fight prior to that, he lost to Sam Alvey, split decision. Then he defeated Francis Barroso, split decision. Lost to Pat Cummins, split decision. So it'll be interesting to see how this fight plays out. I mean, Jean Vellante, we know what he's about. He's tough, he's durable, he hits hard, he throws his strikes with bad intentions, knockout power all the time, and it'll be interesting to see how this plays out with Oleksichuk. I mean, he's only 23 years old. He's coming into the fight off the back of 14 consecutive wins. Albeit the fight with Khalil Roundtree was overturned to a no contest. Obviously, he won that fight prior to the ruling of a no contest for a failed USADA test. That was back in December of 2017, man. It doesn't seem that long ago, but yeah, back at UFC 219. I think his key to victory in this is trying to outwork Vellante. I mean, we've seen Vellante tire out, and he still throws when he's tired, but you can tell that he's physically fatigued and he's gassed towards the end of some of his fights. For me, Oleksichuk has just got to keep moving. He's got to keep throwing strikes, jabs, 1-2, throwing combinations. Vellante quite often just likes to throw one or two big bombs. He doesn't always set up combinations or throw combinations. Oleksichuk, we saw against Roundtree, get some takedowns, but that's because at the time I don't think Roundtree. This may be slightly harsh, but it looked like he'd never worked on his wrestling at all in a few of his first fights in the UFC, and
it's not harsh.
He was well, true. It's probably true, yeah, because he's a guy who just likes to throw wild bombs, and he was doing that in the fight against Oleksichuk. He was just throwing wild overhands and getting taken down. Oleksichuk was just controlling the fight on the ground. I don't think Oleksichuk will be able to get Vellante down maybe later in the fight. I mean, Vallante's comes from a good gym. Ray Longo and Matt Serra. He's got obviously a sports background, a physical background, athletic background, and he's got decent wrestling, decent takedown defense. I mean, I don't think Alexei Chuk will be the guy who takes him down on multiple occasions and racks up the score that way. So I think his key to victory is volume and output, and Volante is hard to put away, man. So I think you have to go in there with the kind of the mentality that I may not put this guy away, so I'm just going to hit him with a lot of 70% strikes rather than just winging like bombs and trying to hit him with everything I've got and to try and take his head off, because ultimately sometimes against these real tough guys, that's where you come unstuck, because you wear yourself out and tire yourself out trying to put them away when you know that they're durable, and that's their world, and they want to drag you into murky waters and get you tired and get you drained of energy. So yeah, for me, Alexei Chuk's key to victory is volume and setting up combinations, keeping out of the clinch. Volante, he's happy to clinch up against the fence, and he's got no issue with holding you there and working his dirty boxing and knees, elbows in the clinch and things like that. So he's got to circulate whenever he gets his back against the fence, and he's got to throw combinations. And ultimately, I think Alexei Chuk's going to win this fight. I think being the more youthful fighter, I think, and seeing Volante how he does fade in some of his fights, although like I mentioned, he does still have power and he will still throw. He will still keep throwing, although he's tired. He's just, his reactions need to slow, and those punches come at you a bit slow in the second, third round. I do think Alexei Chuk is going to win this fight. I think he's going to be the quicker of the two. I think he does have the ability to get in and out, land combinations, and avoid a winging shot via Volante. But like I mentioned, the key is to avoid getting clinched up and getting involved in a gritty, ugly fight, because that's how Volante want this to play out. But yeah, I'm going to have faith in the youngster here to be able to avoid that, and ultimately I'm going to go with Alexei Chuk to win this fight. I can see him taking a decision.
Yeah, I like Alexei Chuk here too. Man, Volante, he's got to change up what he's doing, how he's fighting in the cage. He has to. There's no volume there. There's no pace. There's no deadly pressure. The cardio somehow drains every single fight, even though he's not putting on a pace and he's not throwing a lot of volume. Maybe that's why he doesn't throw a lot of volume, because he knows his cardio is suspect. I don't know, but he's got to change the way he fights. How he lost a fight to Sam Alvey. I mean, no disrespect to Sam Alvey, but if you don't know how to beat Sam Alvey in 2018/2019, then I just don't know what to tell you, man. Like, if you're not as skilled as Alvey, then that's fine. If you can't beat somebody like Alvey, but Volante is as skilled as Alvey, if not more skilled. And yet he still couldn't beat him. The pace wasn't there. The pressure wasn't there. Yes, he had Alvey backed up to the cage, but that's not because of what Volante was doing. Alvey just backs up to the cage in general anyway. That's how he fights as a counter fighter. And Volante was just looking at him, no volume. It was, honestly, he's got to change up the way he's fighting, because he's going to start racking up losses here. And I actually think that he's a pretty talented fighter as well. He's definitely got a good wrestling background that he doesn't use. He's definitely got power. He is smart inside the cage, When he fought Safarov, he was, he knew that he'd blown Safarov's knee. He was hurting Safarov, dropping Safarov. He wasn't rushing in or doing anything daft. He was patient. He was making sure he broke him down to a point where he knew at that point he could then go in and do something about it and get him out of there, knowing that he wasn't rushing in there early, expending unnecessary energy. I think he's a smart fighter. He's got skills. I don't know. I just want him to change the way he fights. You know what I mean? Like, it's so frustrating watching a fighter that I believe has got a lot of talent that just doesn't use it. And that fight with Ed Herman was not good, man. Like, that's a fight where Vellante underperformed against Sam Alvey. That's a fight where Vellante should have gone out and should have absolutely demolished Ed Herman to say, you know what, my last fight was a bit off. I'm back. I'm here. Don't forget about me. And it just wasn't that way at all. He started off well. He faded late, as he always does. And the fight ended up very, very close. I agree with the decision. I think Vellante won. But it was a lot closer than what it should have been. Now, Michel Alexichuk is aggressive. He'll come forward. He throws volume. He mixes in kicks. He's got combinations. He will stand his ground for sure. He can eat a strike as well. He ate a few of Khalil's now. People may put that onto the whole USADA thing and stuff like that. I don't know, man. You never really know how much to buy into that and what we don't know what drugs is taken. We don't know what causes of those drugs have. Like, some may obviously the performance enhancing, but exactly what about his performance has it enhanced? Has it increased his durability? Has it increased his strength and his power? We don't know enough about what he took to make that analysis of how that would affect it. And what I know is he ate numerous full punches from Khalil Roundtree, which is pretty impressive. He also caught a second wind as well. He tired after that first round and he came back with a second wind. I just think, with all, taking all this into consideration with Michel in this fight, I see him beating Vellante pretty comfortably, to be honest. Unless Vellante changes up his game, mixes in takedowns. That would be a real game changer in this fight for me if Vellante came out with a wrestling heavy game plan. But will his cardio allow him to do that for 3 rounds? Like I say, we know Michel's got a good gas tank, or at least good recovery. To go 3 rounds hard, which he did against Khalil. I know Khalil fell off the cliff in regards to his cardio in that fight, which made it a lot easier for Alexichuk, and potentially made that win look better than it was. But I still think it's an impressive win. He did more than enough to win that fight. He ate the shots of Khalil, and he weathered a storm and came back and beat him, and full credit to him. I just really struggle to see how Vellante wins this fight. Based on the recent footage that I've seen, it's been 2 or 3 fights now where Vellante's been fighting this same way, and you have to assume, based on what you've seen, because that's all you can assume from, that it's not going to change at this point in his career. I'd really love it if it was to happen, if Vellante came out with a wrestling heavy game plan and really made Alexichuk work, but I just don't see it. And even if Vellante does come out wrestling heavy, like I've already mentioned, I'm not sure his cardio holds up either. So I'm going to take Alexichuk to win this fight, and I'm going to take him to win by decision. I still think Vellante is tough. I still think he can eat shots. I think Alexichuk, his power will drop off the longer the fight goes. So I think if Vellante doesn't get finished early, I think his durability will hold up under the drop off of power from Alexichuk for as long as the fight goes. So yeah, I'm taking Michel Alexichuk, and I'm taking to win via decision. Now in the co-main event of the evening, we've got your boy. We've got recently found out your favourite heavyweight fighter of all time, Stefan Struve, versus Marcos Rogerio de Lima. So John, who have you got?
This week we were having a discussion on Twitter where I dropped the bombshell that Stefan Skyscraper Struve is my all-time favourite heavyweight fighter. I get this a lot. Very strange choice, I know. But yeah, man, there's just something about seeing this 7-foot giant in there, man. That I've always followed from the early days when I first started watching MMA and the UFC, and yeah, just been my favourite fighter ever since. I was lucky enough to be there in Rotterdam when he got that win in 15 seconds over Bigfoot Silva. So yeah, that was one hell of a moment for me. But man, he really needs to win here. He's coming in off the back of 3 straight defeats, and I thought when we saw that victory over Bigfoot Silva back in 2016 in Rotterdam, and then he followed that up with a submission win UFC 204, I thought we'd started to see Struve turn a corner, and then he it's just the same old with Stefan Struve, which is always his problem, and it always has been, and it's always going to be, I think, because if he hasn't sussed it out by now after having competed in however nearly 40 professional MMA fights, by the age of 30 I might add, I don't think it's ever going to ingrain the fact that he doesn't utilise his height and reach the way that he should do. And I mean, he's got a monster reach, he's got huge legs, 7 foot tall, man. He should be able to keep guys at the end of his jab or the end of his kicks with ease, and that's the problem. I mean, he's got a huge height advantage over Marcus Rogerio de Lima, who comes in about 6'2". But will he utilise that reach? And the thing that we started to see as well over the last couple of fights, the Arlovsky fight and the Teymur fights in particular, less so in the Volkov fight, is if Struve's just lack of willingness to throw strikes. I mean, he just doesn't throw enough. His volume isn't there, and we've seen him cut some weight and come in lighter than the heavyweight limit before, to see how that benefits him, and to see if his performance improves as a result of that. And it didn't really have the desired effect. And then we've seen him come in, obviously, on the limit, and again he doesn't seem to have much of a difference. His output seems to remain the same, which is he just doesn't throw frequently enough. His wrestling is also suspect. He gets taken down. Teymur took him down, and I think Marcus Rogerio de Lima will be able to take him down. One thing that Struve does possess is very good submissions. He's got good submissions when he's on top. He's got good submissions when he's on his back, and he's got good sweeps. And we saw in the Marcus Rogerio de Lima fight, his most recent outing against Adam Visharek, there was a lot of that fight was back and forth, wrestling, grappling exchanges. Both of the fighters spent time on their back. Both the fighters spent time on top. There was scrambles and yeah. So I think Struve will have the opportunity to possibly utilise some of those submission skills. And we've seen Rogerio de Lima lose our submission. He lost when he was fighting at light heavyweight. He lost to Vincent Prue via the trademark Von Flue choke. We saw him lose to Antigulov by guillotine choke back in 2016. We saw him lose to Nikita Krylov via rear naked choke in 2015. So he is susceptible to being submitted. And forgive me if I'm coming into this fight with tinted skyscraper glasses, but I'm going with my boy Stefan Struve to win this fight. And I think he'll be able to catch Rogerio de Lima in something. In the stand-up exchanges, I don't know whether he will, whether Struve will improve his outcome, increase his outcome, and which he really needs to do. I don't know whether he'll have finally learned to keep someone at the end of his jab. And if he does learn to do that, and if he can start to do that, man, he could be a really dangerous fighter in this heavyweight division, and he can cause a lot of people a lot of problems, because honestly, who wants to come into the octagon against a guy who's 7 foot and knows how to use that massive reach of his? It's just the problem that he doesn't use it enough, and he doesn't throw out the jab. He doesn't throw out the front kick enough to maintain distance, and quite often we see him go for that knee, and he gets caught a lot when he goes in for that knee. Was it possibly the Volkov fight, maybe, or maybe it was a fight prior to that? I can't remember off the top of my head, but he does get. It could have been it could have been going back to Travis Browne fight actually, where he went in for the knee and Travis Browne caught him with a big Superman punch if I remember rightly. That was going way back when. But yeah, he does go for that stepping knee too often. And to be honest, when you're 7 foot tall and you've got such long such a long reach, you shouldn't really be using a knee to the body. You shouldn't really need to. Your opponent shouldn't really ever need to get that close to you. You should be able to maintain distance and keep them at bay. But we just don't see that enough. But yeah, going back to the fight and how I think it's going to play, I think Rogerio de Lima will be able to catch Struve on the feet, because most fighters that Struve comes up against do catch him on the feet. I do probably think that Rogerio de Lima will be able to land a takedown, but if he does, I think that'll lead to his downfall, and I can just see Struve catching de Lima in something, whether it be a knee in the clinch that wobbles him and he gets him down and locks on a submission, or whether it's something off his back or coming off one of the scrambles, whether he can lock up an arm or wrap up the neck or similar. But yeah, I'm going with Stefan Struve to win this fight, and I think he's going to get a finish. I think he's going to get a submission finish over Rogerio de Lima. Like I mentioned, this could be coming into it with Struve tinted glasses, but yeah, I'm going with my boy Skyscraper to break the run and get the victory in this one via submission.
See, I'm going the other way, man, and I think that I don't know. I could be totally wrong. I think maybe Struve's motivation and his drive may have diminished or completely gone. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. It's weird. He's 30, 31 now, so he is young in the game. But man, like you said, he's had so many fights and he's been knocked out 7 times. And I feel that sort of stuff catches up on you. Now, for anybody that doesn't know, with these podcasts, I don't make notes or anything like that. You know, I just like to be free flowing and talk about my opinions, you know, naturally. But I have made a little note for this one for you guys. So for Struve, he's conceded takedowns in his last 7 losses. Okay, over that span of losses, he's conceded 16 takedowns in total. He's on a 3-fight losing streak and conceded 11 takedowns over those 3 fights, 6 of which were takedowns from predominantly strikers. And if you class Teymur as a predominant striker, then all 11 of those takedowns came from strikers. That is a problem. That is a fucking huge problem for Stefan Struve, because he is getting taken down and it's not as if he's offering much resistance either. Now,
No.
De Lima, his move over to American Top Team, his move up to heavyweight is a perfect combination. It's a perfect combination for the move up to heavyweight because, you know, he's not missing weight for a start anymore. His gas tank's good as well. Like, I went into research with this fight, and I thought he gassed out against Adam Visharek for some reason. I just thought he did. And then when I actually watched the tape back, I realised he didn't tire at all. Like, he wasn't breathing heavy at any point in that 3-round fight. So the cardio issues aren't there like it was at light heavyweight. He was a 1-round fighter at light heavyweight. That's how bad it was. He's now the biggest he can be, the strongest he can be. And the American Top Team, they adapt fighters extremely well to the whole clinching and grappling environment. They do that for fighters, and I've seen a couple of little videos on Instagram of stuff of De Lima, and he's working against the cage and really clinching up, and I just feel like that's going to be his game plan in this fight. And if it is, I do see him winning this fight. There's a couple of things that De Lima needs to watch out for, though. Like, he's not going to be a complete cruise for him. He's not going to be able to switch off mentally, because if he does, he will get beaten. So the 2 things that I think are big dangers for De Lima, the first thing is the distance between the outside and the clinch. Like, anything in between there, if Struve decides that he finally wants to throw a jab or a kick and use his range and his reach, which he should have, after 40 fights, learnt how to use. It's almost a mystery to why Stefan Struve hasn't learnt to fight, to use his best asset, which is his height and his reach. Like, and he's had the best guys in the world around him for him to learn, for him to pick that up, and for some reason he hasn't. So it is a complete mystery. So the in-between between De Lima being on the outside and being in the clinch is a danger. He has to be able to close that distance effectively. The second part is something you've touched upon as well, John, is on the mat. So when he's on the mat and he's in top control, just pass that guard instantly. Or if not, just keep your arms out of the reach of Struve. Struve, though, he doesn't throw that sort of stuff as much anymore. So
no, he doesn't.
When we saw in the Tybora was in his guard for plenty of time, and we never, apart from the one time that Struve claimed that he was about to throw up an armbar and Mark Goddard stopped it. I think it was for toes in the cage or something like that. I can't remember, but Struve doesn't really throw too much up from bottom anymore. So although it's a danger and a worry for sure, it's not something I think you have to be overly concerned about, because you can only go on what you've seen from tape. I don't know. I think De Lima's going to win this fight. I think he is going to close the distance. Struve will offer some output. I mean, we're making out that he doesn't throw anything. He does. He just doesn't. He's not even as half as effective as what he could be with it, and that's the problem. I think De Lima's quick at heavyweight as well. He throws quick 1-2s, bursts, which the bursts will help him move forward. Moving forward helps him close the distance. Closing the distance enables the clinch, and then that's where De Lima can either try and trip him down to the mat. And if he can't trip him down to the mat, that's fine. De Lima will stay there and he'll just beat him up in the clinch and use his power and his strength to outmuscle his opponents, and then he'll disengage when he feels it's the right time and start that process again, trying to get in and trying to get the takedown. So he does that well. He does the grinding game well. At least that's what we saw in the Visharek fight, which was his first fight up at heavyweight in the UFC. And Visharek was a similar frame to Struve, not as big, but he's still very, a very tall fighter. So we know that that's fine for De Lima. And listen, this fight, we'll talk about this as well in the hot topics, but this fight from a physique point of view, for me, actually favours De Lima, because De Lima's closer to the hips. So he's going to be able to get in on Struve much easier. And we saw the same thing with Tybora as well. Tybora's 6'2" as well, I think, or 6'3". And because he was so much closer to the hips, the double legs were just seemed effortless from him. And that is one advantage you get as a wrestler or a grinder, a grappler, when you're fighting somebody much bigger, that you are much closer to the hips. I just think a lot of things in this fight favour De Lima, and like I say, the takedowns that Struve gives up is a huge worry for him. If he could defend takedowns, I would probably say that Struve would win this fight. I just don't think he can defend the takedowns. I think they'll come. I think De Lima will grind him topside, or he'll grind him against the cage. Either way, whatever De Lima does, I just feel like it's going to be one of those fights where he does just enough for the referee not to get involved, wastes time on the clock, and ultimately wins the decision. So that's the way I'm going. I'm going to take Marcos Rogerio De Lima to win, and I'm going to take him to win via decision. Now, in the main event of the evening, we've got Jan Blachowicz versus Thiago Marreta Santos. What a fight. We see Santos back again. It's never a disappointment. John, who are you taking to win this fight?
Oh man, this fight's great. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this plays out, because you've got Thiago Santos, who everyone knows has got freakish knockout power. He finishes guys left, right, and centre. Last fight against Jimmy Manuwa was wild. He defeated him, knocked him out in the second round. Eric Anders, the fight prior to that, Anders was done by the end of the third round. That again was another wild fight. Fight prior to that, Kevin Holland. Holland was making his UFC debut. He gave a good account of himself. There's some wild scrambles in that fight and wild striking, and if you just look through this guy's record, I mean, some of the finishes and stuff he's got: Anthony Smith via stoppage, Jack Hermansson via stoppage, Gerald Meerschaert via stoppage, Jack Marshman via stoppage, Nate Marquardt via stoppage. The list is endless, and I mean he'll throw crazy techniques. He'll throw roundhouse kicks and head kicks, low kicks. He mixes up his striking really well. But he's coming up against a guy in Blachowicz who, man, he's tough as nails. He's as tough as they come, and he's coming into the fight off the back of one of his best performances. I mean, Nikita Krylov, everyone was excited about seeing Krylov return to the UFC. I'm a big fan of Nikita Krylov, as I know a lot of people are high on him, but man, that was one of his best performances to date, and he got the arm triangle choke in the second round in that fight, and he's really started to show off his all-round game. He's got decent wrestling, his boxing's good, he started to throw in body kicks a lot more, and he's a dangerous guy, Blachowicz. I mean, okay, he may not always get the finishes like Santos does, but he gets the job done. And when you look at his losses on his record, we go with his UFC losses. He lost the majority decision against Patrick Cummings, who's predominantly a wrestler, very good wrestler. He lost to Alexander Gustafsson via decision. Gustafsson in that fight, he made Gustafsson in that fight look very ordinary. I know Gustafsson was coming into that fight off a bit of a layoff, if I remember rightly. But he made Gustafsson look very ordinary in that fight, and he was piecing Gustafsson up a bit on the feet, and Gustafsson had to resort to wrestling to win that fight. Then Corey Anderson, the fight prior to that, again predominantly a wrestler, and then the fight prior to the Corey Anderson loss was the original, the first fight against Jimmy Manuwa, which he lost via decision. So he's come up against some guys as well in Gustafsson and Manuwa who are proven finishers in this division, and he hasn't been finished. So you know this guy's tough. You know he can grind out, and he's only getting better as well. I mean, he lost 4 of 5 fights. Those 4 fights that I mentioned with a victory over Igor Pokrajak, thrown in the middle of that via decision. But he's just getting better and better. And since that Cummins loss in April of 2017, he's beat Devin Clark via rear naked choke. He's got decision wins over Jared Cannonier, decision win over Jimmy Manuwa, where he looks really good, and then that fantastic performance against Nikita Krylov. And we have to remember as well, this is a 5-round fight, and Blachowicz is just a machine. I mean, he does slow, but not over dramatically, and he'll still keep coming forward, and he'll still keep pressuring you, and I really think that Blachowicz is going to get the win in this fight, and I think as long as he can survive the first round and a half, and avoid maybe if he uses his he might utilise his wrestling, because his wrestling game is getting better. He may try and utilise that in the first round and a half. And he's got a very good jab as well, like I mentioned with his boxing. So as long as he can keep range and avoid the heavy hands of Santos, the heavy kicks, I really think he can drag this fight out, drag it into murky waters, into the later rounds. I think if he survives the first round and a half, 2 rounds, I think it will go to a decision. I do think he'll probably lose the first round, but then I don't know, I think I can see him coming back into the fight. I can see him wearing on Santos. I could see him mixing it up between striking and wrestling, mixing up and disturbing the rhythm of the fight, so Santos can't get into a groove with his striking. And yeah, I'm swaying to Jan Blachowicz in this fight. I think he's going to win a decision. I think it's going to be close because obviously when you're a powerful striker like Santos, if you land 2 or 3 heavy strikes in the round, that straight away can open the judge's eyes and can score a round in your favour over someone landing 15 tidy, crisp jabs against you. So I think it's going to be very close, but but yeah, if he gets out of those first 2 rounds, I think Blachowicz wins his fight via decision. Now, saying that, this is by no means a confident pick, and this is a real tough fight to call. And I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if we saw Santos come out there and do what Santos does and just blast his way through Blachowicz. And if he catches you right and he catches you nicely, he can put away anyone. He can put away anyone in this division, including Blachowicz, who's notoriously hard to finish. So yeah, my edge and my lean and my pick for this podcast is for Blachowicz, but yeah, it's going to be a fun fight. It could go either way. We could see Santos land another one of his trademark knockouts, highlight reel finishes, but yeah, I think Blachowicz is going to weather the storm, and I think he's going to come out the other end of it and get a very close decision victory.
Well, first and foremost for me, the one thing that I want to mention in regards to Jan Blachowicz is absolute respect for the guy of how he recovered his career. Very, very few fighters, and I can't think of any off the top of my head. I'm saying very few because I'm sure there will be some out there, but very few fighters have ever started to hit a decline and then just totally done a 180 on the career and then picked it back up again and started putting wins together to the point where you're getting to the top of the division. Now, I know the light heavyweight division is a little shallow now. It's filling back up nicely, which is good, but he still cannot take away anything from Jan Blachowicz in that respect. You know, he was looking completely done and shot after the Vellante fight, after the Pat Cummins fight, and like I said, the dude just completely 180'd himself and started putting wins together and looking good in doing so. However, at some point, I think that run stops, and I think that's going to be on Saturday, because I favour Thiago Santos a lot in this fight, and I'm struggling to see much of a path to victory for Jan Blachowicz, and I'll tell you exactly what the path to victory is for him. So Jan Blachowicz has to get Thiago Santos to the mat, but not only does he have to take him down, he has to get his back flat on the mat so he can start working his grappling. From there, Blachowicz is very good. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He showed that in the Nikita Krylov fight. He was very dominant on the mat, even when he was taken down. You know, he reversed position, and then he swarmed all over Krylov and completely dominated him on the mat. But to get Santos flat on his back is much easier said than done. Santos has got a good mat return. He's also got decent takedown defense as well. So he'll back up against the cage, but he does the right things. He'll drop his base if he needs to. You know, if he starts feeling the hands get closer to locking behind the top of his legs, he will dig for his underhooks. You know, again, something that fight is supposed to do when defending takedowns. Now, from here, once he's done the basics, so he's dropped his base if he needs to, he's got his underhooks in, defending the takedown, he can then use his strength. He's strong as fuck, so, you know, then he's in an advantage. But he doesn't stop there. He doesn't hold position and wait for the right time to exit out or anything like that. He punishes you for in that position. He'll hit you with a knee. He'll hit you with an elbow. Those knees to the middle of the body, man, in the clinch are nasty. That is going to take wind out of you. It's going to take gas out of you. And it's just a really, really good tool to use. So for me, I feel that Jan Blachowicz's biggest path to victory, it's not flawed, but I just don't think it's that high of a possibility to get Santos down and totally roll on him. The mat return is a big one, and I said it last week the week before in regards to Ricky Simone and Hani Yahya, in regards to Simone's mat return just popping straight back up, and Thiago Santos does that. And do you know what? The cardio edge in this fight is with Thiago Santos as well. So, you know, I'm seeing a lot of, or it's either Santos early or Jan late. Man, I just don't agree with that narrative at all. Like, you go back and watch Thiago Santos fight Eric Anders. Santos it was a high-paced fight. They were both winging bombs, but Santos had to defend takedowns. He had to defend the grind. Anders was looking to get the fight to the mat. He did take him down a couple of times. Santos was popping back up, he was getting taken down again. You know, that sort of thing would normally, especially with the size of Santos and how much muscle he carries and how aggressive and fast-paced he puts on his fights, that sort of grind from Eric Anders should have tired Thiago Santos out, and he did look a little bit tired at times, but he recovers really well as well. And not only did Thiago Santos have to do that for 3 full rounds, he then ended up breaking Eric Anders. He was the one that broke Anders, not the one that broke himself. And he still would have gone that extra, well, at least, and he was going into that 4th round looking pretty fresh. So I'd imagine he'd have had a 5th round in him as well. Then go and look at Jan Blachowicz versus Jimmy Manuwa, blowing, mouth open, deep breaths after round 2 of a relatively moderate paced fight. The cardio's with Thiago Santos in this fight, it really is. And I just feel that Jan Blachowicz, he hasn't fought many explosive, powerful guys, and probably the closest one that he has fought to Thiago Santos is Jimmy Manuwa, and especially in their second fight, when Manuwa was winging the bombs, Blachowicz was back into the cage, and he was reactively shooting when it got a little bit too much, which is a smart thing to do. But Manuwa was stuffing those takedowns, and I think Thiago Santos will as well. The difference is Thiago Santos hits harder than Manuwa. He's more aggressive than Manuwa. And also when it comes into a brawl and you're throwing punches in quick combinations, actually Thiago Santos is quite accurate as well. I'm struggling to see it for Jan Blachowicz. I really am. I think Thiago Santos will knock him out. I think he'll knock him out early. But if it goes late, I think Blachowicz will tire before Thiago Santos tires. Thiago Santos just does a lot of things well that go unnoticed because of how exciting he is to watch. So, like I said, just doing all the right things in defending takedowns and not only holding out position, but punishing his opponent for going in for that takedown. It's almost like, okay, you want to try and take me down, that's fine, but I'm telling you, you get stuck and I'll fucking punish you, and that's exactly what he does. I think Jan Blachowicz is going to back up to the cage, man. If he meets Thiago Santos in the middle and fights fire with fire, then he's probably fucked. But yeah. he's going to back up to the cage, and when he backs up to the cage, that's going to give Thiago Santos time to throw kicks, throw his hands, and just unleash power on him. And especially if Thiago Santos uses kicks as well. You know, Jan Blachowicz caught a kick of Nikita Krylov's and took him down. That's how he got one of his takedowns. But those kicks from Santos come too hard and too quick to be able to catch. I'd be very surprised if he tried to risk taking one to the ribs to catch it and take him down. Like I say, I just think a lot of things point in the favour of Thiago Santos in this fight. I think he's the real deal at light heavyweight, and I think he's a problem. He's an obvious problem, I think, for a lot of fighters. So I'm going to take Thiago Santos to win in this fight, and I'm going to take him to win via knockout. And that's all she wrote for the fight breakdowns, guys. But we move on and welcome to the hot topics portion. The first thing I'd like to kick this off with is something I mentioned in the introduction of the podcast, which is around name value. And I think this is a classic case of fight cards don't need name value. UFC Prague is an amazing fight card. It really is. Honestly, I genuinely don't see any boring fights on this card at all. I think they're all going to offer something. I think the fights will offer something different. I think we're going to have plenty of knockouts. I think we're going to have a couple of submissions. I just think overall it's a great card, and the biggest name that we've got on this card, I mean, if you go in veteran-wise, you'd say Stefan Struve. If you go in current, you would say Thiago Santos. They're the 2 biggest names on this card, and yet I would imagine, no disrespect, a lot of casuals probably wouldn't have heard of either, but that doesn't diminish this card one little bit. I'm honestly so excited for this card. It's, I'm always excited to watch fights, but this card is got me very, very excited for the weekend. I just think we're gonna see a lot of firefights. I think we're gonna see some potential prospects look good, win or lose. I think some stars are going to be born. I think we're potentially going to be looking at future world champions. Like I say, I'm so excited, and it doesn't need name value for me. And if you look at next week, for example, UFC 235, you've got John Jones fighting in a title fight. You've got Tyron Woodley, the champion, fighting in a title fight as well. But man, I don't mean any disrespect to them, but I'm more excited about some of these fights than I am for those two fights, and those two are world title fights. So, I mean, what's your take on the whole name value thing, John? Do you think it's important for the UFC? Do you think it needs a healthy mix? Do you think it's not important at all because you can get some fantastic fight cards like this without name value? You know, what's your thoughts, man?
Yeah, I've said this many times before on the podcast. I'm probably I'm like you, as we're probably as far from MMA snobbery as you can get. I mean, we'll watch anything.
Snobbery a word?
I don't know, but it is now. It is for this podcast. But yeah, I mean, I'll watch any fight, and the reason that we stay up until 6 o'clock, most 6 a.m. on a Sunday, most weekends, is because in MMA you never know what you're going to get. You can get fantastic name value on a card, and man, the card stinks, and you can get big names, and the card stinks, the fight stinks. You can get lesser known names, and you get fantastic matchups, and for me, I echo your statements. This card, I'm really excited for it. I think there's some great matchups. I think there's potential for fireworks in a lot of the fights on there as well. I don't think there'll be many boring fights at all. So for me, mixed martial arts events should never be judged before the event. I've got no issue with people saying that. Especially our friends across the Atlantic in America, I've got no problem with them complaining about perhaps the lack of name value on pay-per-view cards, because obviously they have to pay $60 or whatever it is for those pay-per-views. So obviously, in theory, you want the best names possible, because you think they're going to give you the best entertainment, the best value. That's not always the case, and we've seen many times before that big events, UFC 208, although main event wasn't particularly, from a main event pay-per-view standpoint, it wasn't particularly great because it was pretty much thrown together, but there's some decent name fighters on that card from top to bottom, and man, that card sucked, and I had to sit there and endure it from start to finish live, and then you get cards. There was a card, possibly off the top of my head, UFC 206, I want to say, in Canada, which was a fantastic card, and it may have been 210, but 210 possibly rings a bell.
It was I think it was 217 as well.
That was in New York, wasn't it? That was fantastic.
It was the Cody Garbrandt and TJ Dillashaw.
216 was the one. 216.
216.
Yeah, that was that was a fantastic event. From what I can remember, was it 216? I can't remember off the top of my head anyway. But yeah, he was Cody Garbrandt. I mean, yeah. So you never know what you're going to get, and yet, like I say, I can sympathise with people who have to pay pay-per-view, because, like we say, we just pay a subscription and we get every single UFC event that's on. So it makes no difference to us. We're going to watch it either way. But yeah, it could have an impact if you had to start paying the equivalent over here, £40 or whatever for a pay-per-view card. Maybe opinions would change and would say, well, I'm not too happy with the name draws on the card, but for me, styles make fights, and it's not always the best cards on paper that deliver. Again, another quick example: UFC 200, big marquee event. There's some big name fights on that card, and I remember feeling a little underwhelmed come the end of the night. I mean, there were some good fights on there, but just for like the fights that were on that card on paper. I expected more, just individual fights off the top of your head. There's obviously the Ngannou against Derek Lewis fight stands out. So for me, I'm the same as you. I never like to judge a card beforehand. I never like to. I'd never sit here and say I'm not going to watch this card this weekend. Because you never know what it's going to deliver, and sometimes some of the lesser cards on paper have delivered the most action and the most violence and the most exciting fun finishes in the sport, and that's why we watch it. So yeah, for me, this is one of those cards that's got the potential to offer fireworks. So I'm really excited for it.
I totally agree, man. And there was a Mexican card. I think it was a couple of years ago now. I think in Mexico City, and honestly, on paper, it looked terrible. It looked absolutely terrible. One fight I remember straight off the bat was Dustin Ortiz against Hector Sandoval. It was in Mexico City in 2017. Peterson Moreno headlined it, and man, that card was not great on paper at all. Yet I think the first 5 or 6 fights ended in the first round, and it was crazy, man. We had some awesome fights that night, and obviously Mexico City always brings out the bad gas tanks as well with the altitude. So it was fun. But going back to this card, I totally agree, man, and I can't guarantee it because, like you say, we never know. But I'm pretty sure that after we've watched UFC 235 next week, that when you look back at this card in UFC 235 as a whole, this card would be better. I'm pretty confident that's going to be the case. I think there's pretty much every fight is exciting on this card, and I think it will live up to it. So, there has been times before when we've been hyped for a fight card and it's not delivered, but fight cards like this do tend to deliver. And like I say, it's a great fight card. Needs no name value for me. I know all the fighters pretty well anyway, and I know that the styles are going to clash beautifully, and I know we're going to see some fireworks. So I'm happy for sure. And the next thing we're going to talk about is fighters' physiques and subsequent styles because of that. So I know this was your topic, John. I know there's a specific fight you want to talk about. So fire away, man.
Yeah, going back to my guy, Stefan Skyscraper Struve. And yeah, just wanted to talk about really how, just fighters' physique, fighters' build and stuff. How you think that it should give them a major advantage, but it doesn't always work out that way. And yeah, some people don't utilize their physique and things to the best of their ability. So Struve, the prime example, we mentioned it in the fight breakdown, 7 foot tall, massive long legs, massive reach, and he just doesn't use it. He doesn't use his jab well. He doesn't use those front kicks well to maintain distance and range. And yeah, he gets caught all too often. People can close the distance. He's so tall that people find it pretty easy to shoot underneath his jab and things like that, and get the takedown. And yeah, you'd think that being 7 foot tall would be a massive advantage, but it doesn't work in that way. And whether that's just his training and his ability, or whether it's the fact that he's been so tall actually works against him. And I don't know, with a lot of tall fighters as well, we always think, they're taller, they've got the reach advantage, they should just be able to box from the outside and keep them at distance with kicks and things, and be able to win the fight quite comfortably. But a lot of fighters struggle with that, and something you'll find with taller fighters as well is they're quite often slower. Obviously the long limbs, the limbs got further to extend, so they're quite often slower than the shorter fighters. And yeah, for me, it's really about utilizing your physique to the best of your ability, and yeah, really adapting your style to get the best benefit from it. And we do so often see fighters it doesn't always work out that way. Vic is another example. Obviously fighting at lightweight, he's 6'3", I think he is, really tall for the weight class, but he's lost his last couple of fights now. People are starting to counter that jab by going over the top with the big overhand and things like that, and working their way onto the inside, and yeah, when you see a fighter's physique and things, it's not always a positive. Sometimes it can work against them. Sometimes they haven't got the tools, the technique and things to really utilise their natural strength in their physique to their best ability. And I think this fight card this weekend is the prime example with Stefan Struve. The guy should be an absolute beast at heavyweight. He should be able to beat the vast majority of people purely utilising his jab and his and that front kick, and unfortunately he just doesn't do that. He doesn't do it enough, and more often that he comes unstuck and loses fights, and probably not a fantastic fantastic example going on my very basic amateur background, but the very first fight I competed, I'm tall. I fought at 155 pounds, 70 kilograms, lightweight, and I'm nearly 6'2", and I was fighting against a guy who was probably 5'7", if I'm being generous, maybe. But yeah, just obviously, I'm not saying I'm anywhere near the level of these guys who have been doing it for years. But yeah, just I got told what to do by the coaches. I trained with the guys in Birmingham, Tom Breeze, etc., and they said use that the jab, use the front kick, utilise your height, but didn't do it, man. Let the guy get on the inside and crack me with a few shots and force me to jump into a takedown and get caught in a guillotine, and that was the end of that. But so yes, I just wanted to get your thoughts on it, what you think, whether being this big tall rangy guy is always a good thing, whether it's a good thing but people don't utilise it well enough, or just what's your take on it, man?
I think it all comes down to the style. So the style of how you fight against the style of your opponent. So, for example, with somebody like Struve, we'll use the Struve and De Lima as an example, because Struve technically, if he handled his height and his reach more effectively, could really stifle De Lima. It would mean having to fight on the back foot, because De Lima's style is to bulldoze, to come in and close the distance. But because he doesn't, it then gives the style edge to De Lima, because he's so short. His style will be to get in on the hips to take his opponent down to the mat, and because Struve is so tall, his hips are closer to the reach of De Lima. So in that matchup, I stylistically think it favours De Lima for sure. But if De Lima was a striker at 6'2", fighting Stefan Struve at 6'11" or 7 foot or whatever he is, if De Lima was a striker, then that would heavily favour Struve straight away, because De Lima would have to be getting on the inside, and Struve naturally, as a striker versus striker, should have an advantage. But then again, like I say, he doesn't really fight like a 7 foot dude should fight. So I don't know. It's a tough one. For me, it all does depend on style. But then on the flip side of that, you've got, I don't believe that in every fight the height and the reach advantage, because it's always called an advantage. So whenever you're talking about a fighter who's taller and longer, you always say he's got the height and reach advantage. I don't think that's always the case at all. Look at Michel Prazeres, old little tank, just bulldozing his way around any division he likes, throwing everybody about. The dude's tiny. He's like 5'6", fighting at 170 pounds. You know, he's so small, and yet it doesn't matter. It does not matter. Every single person he fights is taller than him. Every single person he fights has a bigger reach than him, and yet they can't do fuck all about it. And I think to the flip side of that, I don't think it always matters. But then there are fights it does matter. So it does matter. So the one that I picked out when we broke down was Montel Jackson and Brian Kelleher, and knew that height and reach advantage was actually an advantage, and I knew it would play a part because of the styles. But then, like I say, it always comes back to the style of the fight. And when you are savvy, looking at fights and analysing each fighter and weighing up the strengths and the weaknesses and the paths to victory and the advantages and the disadvantages and where they're good and where they're not, where they're deficient, when you're savvy with those sort of reads, you can then start making the decision, the educated decision of whether height and reach comes into play, and if it does, who does it favour? Because, like I say, in this fight with De Lima and Struve, it favours De Lima because he's shorter and stockier, and you know, anybody that looks at this fight, when they square up at the weigh-ins and somebody sees that picture, they're going to go, oh my God, Struve's going to absolutely kill this guy because of the size of him. Whereas, in actual fact, Struve may win the fight, but it's not going to be because he's bigger. You know what I mean? Yeah. That it's not going to be a factor. He could make it a factor, like we've already discussed, but, you know, he doesn't. And, it's like I say, it's one of these subjective and analytic things that there's just no right or wrong answer. It just all depends on what style, what matchup, etc. So I get the frustration totally with Stefan Struve, and it's also there's other frustrations as well with different fighters. Like, for example, you look at someone like I mentioned earlier, Jean Vellante. You know, he doesn't throw anything yet. I think he's actually a talented fighter, and it's a shame. And it's a similar thing with Struve. He's huge, and he could have, you know, if he'd got that distance and range management down to a T and learn how to fight, how he should be fighting as a really tall guy, he would be a problem for a lot of people. He wouldn't even need to be the most skilled fighter because he would have such a physical advantage. But yeah, it is what it is, man. You know, so there's always time to change in MMA. I know he's had a lot of fights. He's still young. Maybe he's got another 5, 6, 7 years under his belt, and if so, then he can still definitely improve in that time. So we'll see for sure. And then finally, moving on to the last topic, as always, we'll discuss the potential fights that occur in a fight of the night bonus or a performance of the night's bonus. Now, John, you stole all mine by going first last week, so I'm going to go first this week. Do you know what? I did want to pick Thiago Santos for a performance of the night and a fight of the night as a left field pick, because I don't think we've ever done that. But I'm going to go for Damir, Hadzovic and Polo Reyes as my fight of the night. I just think that if it's the barn burner, I think if they're both going to stand in the middle of the cage and bang till someone falls, then it is going to get fight of the night. I'm pretty confident. I would pick Thiago Santos. I just don't think Blachowicz is the opponent that Manuwa or Anders was in regards to pushing forward and being aggressive and being able to eat shots. I think Jan Blachowicz knows where his durability limits are, and I think that's why he'll back up. And because of that, for a fight of the night, you tend to need both guys to really chip in with something exciting. I'm not saying that Blachowicz won't chip in with a good performance, but I just don't think it's that fight's going to reach the excitement of other Thiago Santos fights. However, I do think Santos gets a knockout, and if it does, it's likely going to be brutal as fuck. So I'm going to pick Thiago Santos for the knockout for a performance of the night. I'm going to pick Damir Hadzovic and Polo Reyes for fight of the night. And my other performance of the night, I'm going to go for Michel Prazeres. I think he'll look fantastic against Naurdiev. I think he'll do some awesome stuff on the ground. Like I say, I think he pulls off another rare north-south joke. So yeah, Prazeres and Thiago Santos performance of the night, and Hadzovic and Polo Reyes for my fight of the night.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you on the fight of the night. We've had Hadzovic and Polo Reyes. I think that's going to be a really good back and forth. I think they're just going to stand and trade, and yeah, till one of them drops. So I'm definitely with you on that one. With regards to the performance of the night, it's pretty tough because obviously I've picked Blachowicz to win the fight in the main event, but like I mentioned in the fight breakdown, I can definitely see Thiago Santos finishing him, and obviously if he does finish him, then there's every chance that will get a performance of the night bonus. If not, possibly Prazeres puts it away on the feet, like I said again in the breakdown. Naurdiev doesn't mind getting hit, and Prazeres got some heavy hands, so I wouldn't be surprised if he drops him and puts him away. So I'll go with because I've picked Blachowicz to win in the fight breakdowns. I'm not going to go with Santos, so I'll go with Prazeres, and I think he may catch him and put him away, and put him to sleep. Then the other performance I'm going to go with my man. I've got to go with Stefan Skyscraper Struve. I picked him to win via submission in the fight breakdowns. That submission's going to win a performance of the night bonus for me. And yeah, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to see Skyscraper back in the win column.
We'll see, man. And that's the lot for this week's podcast, guys. For the bets this week at UFC Prague, don't forget to check out the premium bets from Newsome MMA and the membership of options available too at newsomemma.co.uk/premium-bets. So, John, before we hit the Newsome MMA plug, what do you need to mention, man?
Yeah, man, as always, just check out everything that's going on across different platforms. Fight Post, www.fightpost.co.uk. Hopefully she'll be getting some stuff out on there in the near future. They've just hit the 50,000 followers mark on Facebook. So yeah, always putting out some good stuff. So make sure you check that out. Of course, Newsome MMA. I'll be hopefully getting some interviews out in the next couple of weeks with some really good fighters who are competing on upcoming cards. So keep an eye out for that. And yeah, as always, week in, week out, hit me up on Twitter at MMA and me. Always like to talk fights. Always like to talk MMA with anyone out there who's got a passion for it. So yeah, hit that follow, and I'll make sure I follow back. And yeah, let's talk some fights, man.
Awesome. Now for the Newsome MMA mentions. First of all, I'd like to mention Concussion Pro 1, who are partners here at Newsome MMA. Concussion Pro 1 are the world's first dedicated concussion supplement, providing protection, recovery and benefits to the brain and body of professional athletes. If you go to concussionpro1.com, you can use promo code NewsomeMMA15 for 15% off your order. The next mention is to the long-term sponsor of Newsome MMA, CBD Life UK. CBD is an amazing product and something that I use myself. Thousands of professional athletes also use CBD too. And at CBD Life UK, they have a wide variety of products to suit the needs of any customer. You can go to cbdlifeuk.com and use promo code NewsomeMMA to get 15% off of your order as well. And the final mention of Newsome MMA is Golden Ticket's fight promotions. Golden Ticket put on some fantastic MMA shows and are one of the biggest regional promotions in the Midlands over here in the UK. The next event is GTFP 11 at the Hangar Events venue in Wolverhampton on February 23rd. And I just want to say a huge well done to the promoters as they've totally sold out. The venue will be at capacity and they've announced their pay-per-view too. Also look for Golden Ticket to be venturing further into Europe during 2019 too. And you can follow them on all their social channels, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, to keep up to date with everything that's happening over there. And that's it from us, guys. Enjoy the fights on Saturday night and we'll see you next week.